Good evening, good evening. It's been so long since we've had a meeting, we had to refresh ourselves as to the agenda and how things go. And good evening, staff. Great to see you again. And good evening to our new members. It's wonderful to see you. And I hope sometime we can have you share with us a little bit about yourself, since we didn't get copies of your application, where this lady is a tradition in our city, but I don't think I've met either one of you before, so welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And welcome as well. Mr. Servance can't be with us, but he would like to attend via electronic means. And so our first order of business, I would like to ask the board for its vote in favor of having Tony, who represents the planning board.
If Mr. Servance can give a brief explanation as to why he is unable to attend in person.
I wanted to do this first so he would be a member of the roll call, and he can't do it if we can't hear him. Okay. The chair will entertain a motion from any member of the board to allow Mr. Servance to participate electronically.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion.
Well, again, Mr. Servance need to provide
We'll get to him.
No, he needs to do it before you vote.
Before we vote.
Hello, good evening. I'm unable to be with you all today due to medical reasons. As soon as I get clearance, I will be back up and be present.
Well, you're here in spirit, and now you're here electronically. So the chair has just entertained a motion to have you participate in our meeting. Ms. Humphrey moved, and we're the second. Any discussion on this? From time to time, we've allowed members of this board who are either out of town or there's a situation that keeps them from being physically here, but they would like to attend electronically. Mr. Servance is still chairman of planning? I guess he is still. You're still the chairman of the planning board?
I'm not the chairman of the planning board. I'm just a member now. My term was over.
Just a member. Well, a very good member.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. All those in favor of allowing Mr. Servance to participate electronically, please do so by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you very much. Okay,
Thank you.
Yes, and welcome. Let's do a roll call, young lady.
Gary Libby,
Here.
Robert Ellis,
Here.
Tony Servance,
Present.
Amy Powell,
Here.
Helen Humphreys,
Present.
Ray Masson,
Here.
and William Bittertor.
Bittorf, yeah, here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Would it be appropriate now for us, as part of our welcome for the new members, to have them introduce themselves and share just a moment with us on their background, their eligibility, their interest in the workings of this board?
If you would like to amend the agenda to do that, yes.
Okay, yes, I'd like to move that we amend the agenda to ask our new members to just give us a word or two about themselves. We're so happy to see you. We have been very close to having or not having a quorum for 5 months, I guess it is, and 5 meetings, and so we welcome you. And do
you want to do the Pledge of Allegiance first and then have them do their?
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea. And I'll ask Ms. Humphrey to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Helen, you want to lead off and share with us a little bit about your...
Well, I'll start by saying I'm definitely the oldest one on the board, and I've had a business called Humphreys & Son since 1954. I'm delighted to be here, and it's not safe giving me a mic, so I will cut myself off quickly and just say it's nice to be here, and I look forward to meeting and having meetings with you all.
Thank you.
And this man I've known a long time.
She's probably got a mic in her handbag, too.
Is this on?
No, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I guess it's on.
Welcome.
I'm Amy Pyle, and I did write something down because I also tend to go on and on. But, you know, a few things I wanted you to know about myself. I live on South Grandview, just south of Main Street. The redevelopment board, this redevelopment board, was the first place I ever spoke publicly. And I've been working to improve the area ever since. I started with my home, which was just supposed to be a vacation house, and now I have some rental properties adjacent to it in Surfside Village. Since then, I've watched my neighborhood improve and good neighbors settle in, but there's still a lot to do. I served on this redevelopment board for 2 terms before running for city commission in 2018. I serve on another advisory board, the Bike Week Master Plan Task Force. So biker events are something I'm keenly interested in as a part of redevelopment of the area. I'm excited to work with Ken and Angela because neither one of them was here when I served before. On top of our jobs of voting on projects that come before us, I plan to bring ideas to this board to help staff as only boots on the ground kind of resident can. I think a lot of small things can help in the big picture of redevelopment. I hope the other board members will do the same. I believe the image of Daytona's Beachside is something we really need to focus on for the benefit of residents, businesses, and visitors. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Yes, sir.
My name is William Bidorf. I was originally born in Annapolis, Maryland. I traveled around all over the country. My dad was in the Air Force. When I moved here some years ago, this is the one place I fell in love with, and I spent most of my life here. And this board is very important to me because this is what's going to reshape Beachside. And I live on Beachside currently at 402 East International Speedway Boulevard. And for some years, I've been, tried to figure out the development process. It just takes time. But I just believe in Daytona, and I just want to make Daytona better just strictly through the leadership here today.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm Ray Masson, formerly from the Historic Preservation Committee, and I saw that there wasn't a quorum when I go to the video. I'm like, these guys can't vote. Let me change my allegiance, even though we're sort of interchangeable. And I've been in Florida since 1981 in several different areas. Daytona is currently my home since 2014. And I really, every time I come here, either on vacation previously or currently, it's like all these empty lots, they need to be redeveloped, and what could I do to get involved? So at least support in that respect. So I'm kind of excited about this. It's pretty good.
Thank you very much. I was very pleased to read, I guess, in an email that you've had a briefing from staff, is that correct, on the duties, responsibilities, authority of the board? Yes. Have each one of you gotten copies of the redevelopment plans, the Main Street, the E-Zone, and the South Atlantic? Okay, yes. Very good, because we haven't given up on them. They have been put a little bit on the back burner as this board has now other duties in the Land Development Code, and we have several of them tonight. So I'm very glad you've had a chance to get copies and to look at them, because there have been a lot of updates on that plan. Peabody Auditorium is a new building, almost, and there are other things we've been able to do over the last couple of years. So thank you very much. That's terrific. Yes, Mrs. Humphrey.
Since I cut myself, there's one quick thing. I was on the planning board, and pointing to you over there, I am so pleased with what Dr. Duva did on International Speedway.
It's beautiful.
I've eaten there. That is such a beautiful, so we can make a difference. What was there before was terrible looking. So, yeah, I want to see that International Speedway just be a gorgeous entrance to our most famous beach.
We're sorry you missed the presentation that Public Works and State Road did for us on International. And we're waiting with bated breath on the completion of Dr. Duva's project, which is to the
yes,
west
on the
across
other
the
side,
street,
yeah.
to do a beautifully landscaped parking area, beautifully landscaped with no request for setbacks or anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay, very good. Thank you. If everyone has had an opportunity to look at the minutes, they seem like ancient history, don't they, Bob? Yeah. Are there any additions, corrections to the minutes as printed? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion to accept the minutes as drafted.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we'll go with Robert and a second over here. Okay, all those in favor of supporting the minutes as printed and in your hands, please do so by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. I guess we will go to new business. We have to select a chairman for this next year and a vice chairman. I have worked really well with Robert Ellis, who is our vice chairman, and we're two of the survivors, I guess, of the original board. I've enjoyed tremendously running uphill for 3 years, which is what it feels like being on this board, but I have strong legs and was a runner in high school, so it didn't bother me. I'd like to nominate Robert as chair for this next year. Do I hear a second?
Well, I was going to move that we
Second.
cast a unanimous vote.
Second.
Okay. I agree. Okay, we have a unanimous vote then. Let us all, for the record, all are in agreement.
Were there any other nominations?
No. No other nominations. All right, thank you. Chair will entertain nominations for vice chair.
I'm willing to be vice chair.
Okay, we have Amy Pyle.
I would make a motion to nominate Gary.
I make a motion for Amy Pyle.
All right.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, we're going to have a split decision.
Okay, I guess we have a vote. Any other nominations other than Amy and me? Hearing none, then we'll have a vote, I guess, first for Ms. Pyle. Is that how you would like us to do the vote?
Yes, it should be a voice vote.
Yeah. All right, all those in favor of Amy, please raise your hand.
No, make it a voice vote.
Or make a voice vote.
Aye.
Okay.
Keep it even, men and women. It's going to be.
All right, all those in favor of me for the vice chair, please do so by saying aye, 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 and aye. Okay.
Now what?
Fun toys.
I'm looking at our attorney. She's looking away. That's not a good sign.
Was it three? Was it 3-2?
It's 3-3.
Yeah.
So now what?
No, he's not a voting member.
Yeah, Mr. Servants cannot vote. And we're shy one member, even,
What about the gentleman on?
He's a non-voting
he's a
member.
non-voting member, represents another board, and he participates actively in our discussions, but he does not vote. Madam Attorney?
And I would ask the two nominees to give a statement as to why they feel they're qualified and see if they can change anybody's minds or somebody can remove themselves from nomination.
Okay, we'll start with Amy.
I put myself out as a nominee because I'm very excited about serving this board. I want to be actively involved and take a role. Mr. Libby has served for several years, and I appreciate that term of service. And so my motivation is strictly to serve and be involved, and not to impose on anyone or step on any toes right off the bat. So I hope Mr. Libby understands that. It's just I'm excited to be involved, and I would like to be vice chair for that reason.
One of the reasons I would be interested in serving as vice chair is because there has been an awful lot of suggestions this past year. I've served for 1 year. I am former chair of economic development. I was a citywide vote on charter review, first and second and third chairman on the County Echo Board, and I've spent an awful lot of my career, both at the Museum of Arts and Sciences and after retirement, in working for the city and the county. And I think maybe, Amy, 1 year maybe on the board under the new provisions in the land use code that have us dealing with zoning and things might be good to know. And I believe in continuity, and I think I'd be able to support Robert and help bring the board forward.
May I make a suggestion? That we table the motion for vice chair until we have a full quorum or a full board to vote. Maybe continue with as things are, or
Well, we could do that, or we could go one more time. Let's vote one more time and see if anyone has had a change of heart. Is that,
And if we could do a roll call vote.
yeah.
Well, to simplify things, I'll change my vote, and then perhaps next time around, maybe you would be. So,
Okay, let's do a roll call vote.
Fine with me.
Gary Libby.
Gary Libby.
Well, so,
All in favor for Gary
Oh.
Libby, raise your hand.
so those that, well, this is kind of odd. If you're in favor of whichever person, either say Mr. Libby or Ms. Pyle as your vote.
All right, that's different. All right.
So then you do a roll call, like,
So do a roll call, and it's not a clean, but it's,
Enter your meeting ID, followed by pound.
Okay, Gary Libby.
Libby.
You have not
Robert Ellis.
entered any number.
Libby.
Amy Powell.
Pyle.
Helen Humphreys.
Libby.
Ray Masson.
Libby.
William.
No, I'm sorry, Gary. I screwed up.
Okay. Gary, okay. That's right. Gary Libby, okay.
William.
Gary, just, yes, Gary.
Who?
Gary.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And I know that Robert and I are going to do everything we can to involve the full board in the things as they move forward. And we are both loaded with great ideas that were generated by the predecessor members of this board that we haven't gotten to because we had so much interference, missed 5 meetings, that we're ready to go. And Amy, we will involve you to the hilt, my
course.
dear. You probably run from me when you see
happy
me
to
on the
be
street.
serving.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have our election of officers. You want to switch chairs, or?
Do we do that this meeting or next?
yes, you're now the chair.
Yeah,
Oh, boy.
yeah.
That quick, huh?
Yes.
Heavy is the head. Where's the ground?
All right. Do a switch here, so
And let me,
now we're on to presentations, correct?
Yes.
All right. Are we on here? So these are all citizens on this one? Yes, but all of these underneath are citizens speaking on this one.
And then you call
when you want to announce citizens.
staff,
Anybody.
which is Hannah for the presentation.
All right.
Or certification.
Gina, switch the nameplates too.
Yeah.
Make it official.
Make it official, why not?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, now we're all ready to go. And we'll begin with presentations. So we have a staff presentation by Hannah.
If you could announce what the project is, it's,
All right, the project that we have a presentation on is going to be for the Silver Beach condo.
Tony Surveillance.
And Mr. Chair, congratulations to the chair and the vice chair. This item is a quasi judicial hearing. Just want to make that clear.
Okay, need to make that clear. All right. Well, this is a quasi judicial hearing, and we're about to hear a presentation about the Silver Beach condo. At first, we have a staff presentation. Hi, Hannah.
Right. Hannah Ward, senior planner with the city. So this is a request by Robert Merrill with Cobcole, and it's on behalf of Daytona Atlantic Development LLC, who's the current property owner. and it's to rezone 2.66 plus or minus acres of land from tourist accommodations, or the T1 zoning district, to planned development redevelopment to allow for a 27-story condo hotel with the potential for a restaurant and or bar lounge use open to the public. So the property is located on the southeast corner of Silver Beach Avenue and South Atlantic Avenue, or A1A. As you can see from the aerial view, the property is currently vacant and cleared. The current future land use designation on the property is tourist accommodations, and the current zoning on the property is T1, or tourist accommodations. And they are proposing to rezone the property to the planned development redevelopment zoning designation. Just to describe the project a little bit, they're proposing to develop a condo hotel use. So that basically means that each hotel unit could be owned in a condominium style ownership, in which individual units may be owned by the separate entities, and they all can have full kitchens, but the individual units would be managed as one functional hotel, and no permanent residential uses would be permitted as part of this project. So it would be strictly a hotel with units owned by individual owners. And they are proposing approximately 300 hotel units on this property. The maximum proposed structure height is 350 feet, or 27 stories. And they're proposing a restaurant and or bar lounge use that would be incorporated into the hotel structure as accessory uses to the hotel, but also open to the public. All right, so as you can see, here is the proposed development plan. I've highlighted the building footprint. So this structure is going to also include structured parking, or a parking garage, incorporated into the design of the hotel. So I've outlined the footprint here, which also shows kind of how some of the parking would be laid out on ground level and some of the additional features within the main structure of the building.
How would you like us to go on with questions? I mean, this is going to be a lengthy presentation. Can we ask as we're moving forward, or would you prefer that we wait?
I would wait until after she finished her presentation.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've identified the green space surrounding the building and on-site that they're proposing that I'll get into greater detail on further in this presentation. And then they've also got a pool and pool deck proposed at the rear of the property facing the ocean. I also wanted to identify they're proposing one primary access point into the hotel structure that would also allow for access to the parking garage, and then one secondary access point to the south of that's primarily for loading operations. Just to get into some of the details, the accessory uses would include restaurants and bars that would be open to the public. That is permitted by the Land Development Code for any hotel that has 100 or more rooms. The Land Development Code limits the advertising for restaurants and bars. It doesn't allow it, but because they want to be open to the public, they also want to advertise on the hotel signage. They've also requested to increase the maximum gross floor area that's permitted for accessory uses within a hotel from 6 square feet per hotel unit to approximately 15 square feet per hotel unit, and comprising no more than 20% of the building gross floor area that's proposed. The applicant has proposed to comply with the T1 zoning district, which is the underlying zoning district's additional site design and architectural standards for oceanfront hotel developments. And although they're in a redevelopment area and exempt from compliance with the additional standards that I'm going to mention, they have also proposed to comply with the city's exterior color and design standards for major city thoroughfares that apply to South Atlantic Avenue.
I mean, if granted, they're exempt.
Currently, under the Land Development Code, redevelopment areas are exempt from compliance with those provisions.
Without any
Changes? No, correct.
Okay.
Yeah. But they were also proposing that they would meet these standards additionally.
Okay.
That would be applicable in any other area of Atlantic Avenue aside from the redevelopment areas. So I have the proposed conceptual renderings on the screen. The left image is showing a view from Atlantic Avenue, which would be the west elevation, and then the right image is showing a view from kind of a bird's eye view from the beach, which would be the east elevation. Now to get into some of the landscaping. So the applicant has requested a couple modifications to landscaping, but then they've also proposed additional benefits and additional landscape materials to kind of enhance the view of the site from A1A and Silver Beach. So I provided the table right out of my staff report so I could get into a little bit more detail with you all. So along Silver Beach Avenue, as you can see from the layout, where they have the turnaround for vehicles shown, they have to encroach into the required landscape yard 5 feet. So the minimum would be 3 feet at that location, but they're proposing a 40-foot average planted green space that doubles the required landscape materials in that area in exchange for the requested modification. On the south side of the property, they're proposing to develop a code-compliant landscape yard, which would be a minimum of 3 foot in depth. But they are also proposing to add a little bit additional area there, so there would be an average planted green space of 20 feet. And the landscape materials would be code-compliant as well. On the east side of the property, the land development code for the T1 zoning district requires a 10-foot landscape buffer to screen the view from the beach and provide kind of lush landscaping in that area. They are proposing to comply with that depth, but they are also requesting to increase the materials, propose additional materials in that area in the amount of 5 shade trees per 100 linear feet. And then along A1A, the minimum landscape yard is 8 feet. They're proposing a minimum 20-foot depth and doubling the required landscape materials to 10 shade trees per 100 linear feet. Because this site is on the beach, they may use palms and substitute for shade trees, but they would have to substitute those at a rate of 2 palm trees to 1 shade tree. There are additional landscape standards in the T1 zoning district that they will also be complying with as part of this development, which specifies the types of palms they would need to use and sizes, etc. The only other thing they're requesting to modify is the tree preservation requirements. Due to the canopies that palm trees typically have, they are requesting to waive the minimum tree canopy coverage requirement just because palms planted on site don't have the same type of canopy as shade trees. But the land development code does allow for 100% usage on palms on sites subject to salt spray, which this would qualify for that. So a couple more details just to get further into the project. The parking is proposed to be land development code compliant. If you're proposing accessory uses as part of a hotel in the land development code, such as a bar or lounge, you are required to accommodate additional parking for those uses as if they were being developed as a principal use on the property. So they are proposing to be code compliant in that way. The parking will be valet only on site, so they will have to enter into a valet parking agreement when they go through site plan, and it's proposed to be structured so it will be hidden within the design of the building. They have requested to reduce the required stacking lane distance for the parking lot entrance due to the structured parking. That requirement is basically intended to prevent stacking into the right-of-way, but with the structured parking, they actually have a larger entrance into the primary parking area that will be serving them. There's some surface level parking that won't meet those requirements, so they've requested to reduce that distance from 100 feet to 50 feet. And then the only other modification being requested are from the required side setbacks for the T1 zoning district. So those setbacks increase as the structure height increases. So once you're above 55 feet, you're required to add additional 6 inches of setback for every foot of height you go above 55 feet, which would require an 162.5 foot setback on either side of the property, the north and south sides. The applicant has requested to develop the south side at a 20-foot building setback and the north side at a 40-foot building setback in order to accommodate the plan and the proposed plantings. The signage is proposed to be land development code compliant, and they haven't provided the details to that so far. So provided all land development code modifications are accepted, staff recommends approval to rezone 2.66 plus or minus acres from T1, the tourist accommodation zoning district, to plan development redevelopment to allow for a 27-story condo hotel with the potential for restaurant and bar lounge uses as accessory uses that would be open to the public. A majority vote by the planning board members present and voting is required to recommend approval to the planning board and the city commission. And this item is tentatively scheduled to be heard by the planning board on June 1st, 2023, which was moved from the initial date of May 25th, 2023. And the item is tentatively scheduled to be heard by the city commission for first reading on June 21st and for second reading on July 5th, 2023. And this concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Ward, for your
welcome.
presentation. Now we open for questions.
Yeah, I've got a few.
Okay.
What would the hotel look like if it complied with all of the existing standards?
So they've proposed conceptual elevations as part of the agreement. They haven't fully narrowed down the design, but the PD states that they will have to be generally consistent with the elevations included in the PD agreement. Now, when they go through site plan approval, what we will require from them is an architectural statement restating each required standard that they need to meet, and then providing a statement addressing how the elevations comply with that standard.
You know, history is something that you hope you learn from. And this building is way too much for that site. The elimination of the setbacks, I can't support that just on that one issue. I don't know when we are going to entertain developers who are willing to build on the land that we can provide without destroying in some form or fashion property adjacent to it, the beach, all kinds of the treasures, the jewels that make Daytona Beach unique. I would, the substitution of palm trees for shade trees, I've heard that one before. And you can go up and down our beach, and the thing that separates our beach from Delray or Vero or any of the great beach towns is that they haven't done that. They have used shade trees. And whether they have a substitution formula because of salt or not, it seems to work a little farther south of us. I'm very much in favor of quality development on this piece of property. I've driven by it for 40 years, and I'm sure Helen has at least, some of us have at least that long. I would envision something there that we're proud of. Now, you can drive around the city of Daytona Beach right now and see buildings that aren't even finished that are within 8 feet of the large building next to it on both the north and the south, and their parking garage encroaches on the public right-of-way. And that was done because they're going to provide a certain small number of apartments for low-income people. That's going to bite us again. I think we've been bitten over and over and over again. All you have to do is walk in front of the Hilton and realize that the property that was taken from the public sidewalk in front of the Hilton was added to the pool deck of the Hilton on the east side of the building. You have to walk single file in a long section of the Hilton. So I can no longer, unless there are compelling economic reasons, not just that we want to do everything we can to let the developer make as much money as he or she can in providing a quality structure. I think they could provide a quality structure as other beachside cities have, but within the existing rules. The rules are there for a reason, and they seem to be there to be broken in Daytona Beach for some reason. And all you have to look at is the damage due to the hurricanes, the last 2 hurricanes, and you can see what happens when you overbuild too close to the beach without the proper setbacks, with a lot of the amenities that are wonderful for this building, but have proven not to be so wonderful for our beachfront. I also am very nervous about the pull-off lanes for deliveries and things to the structure. I can't tell you how many times I and citizens who live on the beachside have to stop their cars dead on A1A because there are deliveries being made on both sides of the street. Or Seabreeze was totally blocked by 2 moving vans that were loading things off and on for about an hour and a half last week. And that's because we haven't provided in hotels like the Adams Mark, the original incarnation of the Hilton, the proper ways to get delivery vehicles off the street. many of us came back to the city and suggested, why don't we become like Naples, Florida, and have all deliveries in the evening or early in the morning before we have traffic? But we were unable to swing that. We lost by one vote on that one. So I love great quality development. Cobb Cole is a wonderful person to bring this project to the public, but I can't. I just can't support it because primarily the setbacks and many of the things they're asking are only to make the building bigger and more lucrative for the developer.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Mr. Chair, the board is given, given their questions on the particular item.
Correct.
But I want to ask our city attorney, should we give the representatives from the project an opportunity to answer some of the questions?
That's what I would
individually from
suggest,
the
Gary.
board?
Maybe we
Yes.
direct our questions
And
to
if
the
we could limit it to
applicant.
questions at this point in time and not opinions until all sides have been able to present
Till we get to
their.
the end here. Yeah.
Correct.
Yes.
I can speak to a couple of things though, if you'd like. So they do have a designated loading area. They have 2 spaces designated and a specific entrance, so they will be loading on site versus off site. If you look at the second entrance to the south of the main entrance, there's 2 designated loading spaces, so it won't need to occur.
The loading
in the
spaces are the
right
ones
of way.
further back,
So
correct?
we have dimensional requirements for loading zones in the land development code, and they would have to comply with those dimensional requirements upon site plan. They haven't
You're not gonna come
requested
back and ask for a waiver on
modifications
those.
from that.
Okay.
So this is the conceptual layout that's been reviewed by staff, including the traffic division. I believe that the access points early on was a concerted effort between Public Works and the applicant to arrive at a decision that would be amenable to everyone. With regard to the setbacks, there is no maximum height in the T1 zoning district for development, provided that you can meet those setbacks. Now, I know the applicants requested modifications. I think the setbacks, if you were to incorporate those, wouldn't allow for the building to exist, but the applicant may be able to speak to the need for the height of the building and the setbacks that they're proposing. And then I think there was one more thing maybe you had mentioned.
Oh, there are a number of things I had mentioned. I apologize for jumping right on this, but
That's all right.
These issues have come to us over and over
Mm-hmm.
and over again, and we've given just about on every one of them to our detriment,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion. Pardon me, Madam Attorney.
One
Do
of
we
the
have any other
benefits, though,
questions from board members?
I do, but I think she's first.
Did you have a response you wanted to give to Ms. Lippert before?
yeah. One of the benefits I did want to mention was they have expanded the landscape areas substantially from what would be required by code in exchange for some of the modifications that they've requested.
And is there a schedule of the landscaping they intend to use? Because green space can be St. Augustine grass that dies and is never replaced to satisfy the code as you're requesting it. So is there a schedule? We had this question with Dr. Duva, who came for a presentation, and I think my colleague was here with Dr. Duva. Luckily, he was able to give us, because his mind works that way, what the landscape schedule was. So I'd love to see that. I'd love to see what you mean by trees, by substituting palms for shade trees, and I'd love to see the green space more defined.
So the code already allows for 100% substitution of shade trees or of palm trees for shade trees on the beach because of the salt spray. They survive a lot better. With regard to the planting materials, there's a table in your staff report that identifies what the code standard would be for landscaping and then what they're proposing. I believe on 3 sides of the property, they're proposing almost double the materials that the code would require. We don't typically evaluate the plant schedule for those details until they come through for site plan approval. But because of the size of this project, you all will also get a chance to approve the site plan.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Thank you very
welcome.
much.
Amy, you had questions?
Hi. Okay, regarding, just for a second, regarding loading, I think that one of the issues that comes up is that even if you have a place for trucks to pull over, if they find it's kind of easy to pull over and do their loading on the street, they may not always comply with that. And I think that's what's happening at the Hilton. They do have a loading area that the trucks are supposed to pull
they do,
into,
yeah.
but they take advantage, and it's kind of hard to police that. So Mr. Libby has a point with that one. So first, I want to look at the staff report on page 3. So the waivers that we're asking are waivers from LDC Article 6. And one of my favorite chapters in the LDC is about redevelopment area standards. And this is something that it wasn't in our binder when we got one, but I think it'd be a great thing for the board members to have, because I reference it a lot when I'm worrying about what's going on in the redevelopment area. I can look it up and say, oh, sign guidelines, because they're a little bit more intensive and more like about beautification and image than regular guidelines. So in LDC section 614C, redevelopment area standards, it talks about the transition between large and adjacent buildings. Let me find that. Here it is. Okay. Let me just read it. The development should be designed with appropriate scale relationships between buildings and adjacent open space features, i.e. boardwalk park, riverfront park, marinas. Structures should be designed to create transitions in form and scale between large buildings and adjacent smaller buildings that are not slated for redevelopment or areas of less intense development. So my point on this goes back to something that Mr. Libby said about what height would be allowed on this site. If we went with the setbacks that are in our land development code, what height would be allowed? Do you know that? How many stories?
It'd be based on what they're proposing, because the setbacks are tiered based on the height of the structure. I
Right.
can only identify what the setbacks are required for this structure, which is what was included in the staff report,
Right,
the
but it should be like
162.
a math equation, not for 27
It is a math
stories.
equation.
So it should be fairly simple to figure out if we have.
Right, but there's no
1,700
maximum height, so the
Right.
height is, the setbacks are determined by the height that they propose.
Right.
Well, how do they comply with the existing setbacks?
So the existing setbacks are based on the height that they're proposing. That's what they've requested modifications from.
Yeah, so, well, we're probably not going to get an answer on that one then.
No.
All right, page 7 of the staff report says, about halfway down, it says, at this time, staff does not have any indication that the proposed development will result in significantly adverse impacts to the natural environment. So I want to kind of go into this for a second. So there's no information in the report of the environmental impacts of this building. So, for example, how does the shading of the beach affect, never mind tourism, but turtle gender, if we're worried about the turtles? Is a beach in shadow all afternoon desirable for tourism? Is wind during hurricanes amplified, potentially causing more severe damage to smaller houses and buildings on the barrier island? And I do have some reference, an article referencing papers that have been written on effects of wind on buildings. Now, they can be built with corners that muffle the wind and all this kind of stuff, but I don't see any of that in the report. So that's kind of important to me, especially in a hurricane area like that. On page 9, the staff report mentions, let's see, dimensional standards, about halfway down in that section there, it says rear east NA subject to CCCL permitting. And the CCCL is the Coastal Construction Control Line, which in one of your diagrams it shows it kind of going right down the middle of the building. Now, we're allowed to build on the east side of it, but those construction requirements are even more stringent. So anything that you build on that side has to have special, more intense
Foundations.
requirements. So I don't see any of that information in there. But for me, despite the additional construction requirements, I believe building seaward of the CCCL right now is not in the best interest of beach preservation, when we're already struggling to recover from recent storms. So I think the staff report should include more about environmental impacts of this building. Recently, some of us attended a presentation by Dr. Young of Stetson University at the Yvonne Scarlett Golden Center. And he stated, we're already looking at a situation where beach renourishment is going to become a regular maintenance requirement for Daytona Beach if the dunes are not allowed to return to their natural state. So you can have a seawall, the beach is continually going to disappear, and we're going to have to continually renourish it, which that can only go on for so long. Seawalls enhance beach erosion and lost beach sand, but the citizens will be on the hook for the cost of the restoration. So I'm wondering if developments on the ocean side should have a factor in there about, okay, we will contribute to the renourishment that's going to happen eventually, because somebody's going to be on the hook for it. Or we're going to have, like, imagine sitting on the seawall with your feet in the water. That's what Daytona Beach is going to look like. Forget about driving. You won't be able to sit on the beach or walk on the beach. And
If we could keep the comments to questions to staff and then allow the applicant to speak.
Okay.
Then after the questions and the staff is able to answer questions, the applicant is able to answer questions, then the board can address just general comments or comments regarding the development.
Perfect. I was trying to kind of keep it targeted, and I got a little off there. So, would staff consider doing an environmental study that, or showing how the environment is going to be affected by this building?
So we defer to the state and federal government for most of our regulations related to environmental considerations. There really isn't a lot in the land development code that would require them to do that other than what's required by the state and federal government. And maybe the applicant can speak more to that, but that's really the standard that we have to hold them to.
So that's why it says staff does not have any indication that
Correct.
the proposed development will result in significantly adverse impacts. So we just kind of write that off. All right.
Oh, no, we're not going to write.
Well, I'm being a little sarcastic there. So, all right.
Can't write that.
Next question. Page 7, at the top, it says staff does not have any indication that the proposed development plan will adversely affect the property values in the area. So that's kind of, number 6 is would not adversely affect the property values in the area. And their statement is they don't have any indication that it would. So I kind of think that a little more has to go into, I guess the question is, would staff please look into the adverse effects of the area because of this building on the area? Because, think about, Mr. Libby brought up the Adams Mark, but what about, the Ocean Walk condos? And if you look at the neighborhood around there, they do not feed that neighborhood with people and viable, bring businesses. Those people get out of that condo and go somewhere else. So I would like to know how staff would determine whether it adversely affects the property value in that area or not, because I think that question is sort of
I would defer to redevelopment on that because planning doesn't really get into the economic issues related to the project. It's more redevelopment staff that is handling the economic side of things, as well as if you have questions regarding the redevelopment area standards, we defer to them for review of the redevelopment area standards. And it was, in my staff report, it was identified they've reviewed them to be compliant with the redevelopment area standards, but you might be able to get into additional
I
details.
got you. So
with
you're
them.
from planning.
Planning.
And I should be directing my planning questions to you, and then later okay. Forgive me, I'm learning here. All right, how about staff report, page 9? This might be a good question for planning. Maximum building height, 27 stories, 350 feet. Minimum lot area, 7,500 square feet, minimum lot width. So there's 3 lots that are combined here. So what you're showing here is the minimum lot width is 75 by 100. I'm assuming that's just one of those skinny lots.
Yeah, so the development plan contemplates them developing all 3 lots.
Right.
They just provide minimum standards in there. I don't know, I would need to look back at the T1 zoning district to see if that's consistent with the T1 district or if they just proposed a standard that they knew that they were able to meet. Maybe the applicant can speak to that more directly, but this PD specifically approves the development plan that would specifically approve the development plan that you're seeing. Nothing really else is contemplated aside from that.
Okay, so my specific question would be about the FAR, the FAR,
Right.
floor area ratio. The value of the FAR that, we're meeting 3.0, which is required, I guess, is based on the amount of property all the way to the high tide line, correct?
Correct.
But the buildable property is much smaller than that.
Right.
So I think that the FAR should be determined on the buildable property, and maybe this isn't in our regulations, and maybe it needs to change, but I'm seeing that as a problem, because you're always going to have a lower FAR if you go all with the property. This is only on beachfront, because that's the only place where it goes off into infinity in a way, So I think I'm wondering if what the FAR would be on the buildable property as opposed to the high tide.
So we don't currently make that distinction in the code based on buildable versus non-buildable. It's what their property limits are. Now, I will say not all properties on the beach own to mean high water. This is just an exception. This is one of the properties that does and has those specific rights.
Okay. All right. Now let's look at that's the staff report. So if I want to talk about the waiver and benefits letter and stuff, that's not you.
I would suggest if you have questions about those to direct them to the applicant, why they may have requested specific waivers from the code.
So that may be all I have for you then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Questions? Anyone?
Yes. In this, Peter, what's the time limit? When do they have to complete the project? Because I've seen a lot of things happen, like across the bridge, and just nothing gets done in some odd years. So
Page 8 of the staff report, development phasing plan. Application shall be submitted for construction permits for the development of the property within 5 years of the approval of the agreement by the city commission. So that would be site plans approved, they're applying for permits to actually go vertical. Construction of the development shall be substantially complete within 10 years of the approval of this agreement, and one 12-month extension of the scheduled application or completion dates may be permitted.
okay. That answers my question, because I have a lot of fears, and that's one of my big fears, because it seems like a lot of people get these PDs approved, and then they go flip them 2 or 3 times and make their money bring the value. So that was my main concern. That's it.
I have
Any
a
other
couple of
questions?
small questions if I'm next.
I think, Helen, would you like to go next, or?
Oh, I'm sorry, Helen, go, please. Initially, I'm really excited about this. I mean, it's needed, it's necessary.
It is.
It's huge for the lot, I will attest to that, and I do have concerns about beach erosion and what's happening, especially in the past. Anyway, my initial question is, the renditions that you have, the pictures, how similar will it be in 5 years when they decide to?
So they're required to be generally consistent with elevations that are included in the staff report and the PD. We don't have the 4-sided architectural elevations yet for that. That typically comes with the site plan. But they are required to comply with our T1 zoning district standards, which there are at least 15 of them related to the architectural treatment that's required, as well as the exterior color and design standards for major city thoroughfares. So they will have to have architectural treatment that is no less than what's shown.
Similar?
Yes.
Okay. I agree with Gary on the trees, 5 trees per 100 feet, and now they want to go 2 palms and 1 shade tree. I'm absolutely against that, personally, because I know what happens. And that, I don't know if there could be a compromise in that, but initially I would not support that.
So I'll just say that that is a presently permitted code requirement is that you
It had
can.
an asterisk next to it, I wasn't sure if that.
Yeah, so basically, they just explicitly stated in the PD that if they substitute palm trees for shade trees, they would have to plant 2 palms for every 1 shade tree that they substitute. So there would be actually more trees on site if they propose palms than if they propose shade trees.
And less shade, but
Yeah.
doing the mathematics, it sounds like you're going from 5 to 3.
It would be,
Per
so
100 feet.
5 shade trees, or it would be 10 palm trees for every 100 linear
It
feet.
doesn't say that.
It's 2 palm trees for every shade tree, so that would be doubling the requirement.
Okay. I defer.
And there are palm trees and palm trees, too. There are, Bismarck palm trees that have a 22-foot shade span, and there are palmettos that have a 3.5-foot shade span.
So along the frontage, the code requires date palms to be incorporated, as well as clusters of 5 palm trees, so that it creates a more unique effect at the frontage along A1A, and that's in the T1 design standards for hotels specifically on the ocean.
5 palm trees are about 30% the cost of 1 Bismarck. And so I like the aesthetic, but there's a very practical economic factor for just about every one of the requests in this proposal. And I think one of our questions was, what would the building look like if we didn't have all of these extraordinary requests? And I think you've heard some, not all. I have a bunch more. I'm sure Amy does too, of questions. They're just questions. Not that we don't love the idea of a new building on that vacant piece of property, or that property being converted into a public space, a park, as everyone all of the engineers, including the Army Corps of Engineers, is suggesting on our beachfront. Anyway, thank you.
Well, I just had a question. Since, of course, we have had a unique hurricane, always have hurricanes.
Your mic.
I grew up on this beach.
Your mic's on.
Okay, sorry about that. Is it on?
No?
No,
Nope.
there you go.
Is it on?
Yes.
Yes.
And then I'll do it. I grew up on the beach for eons. The beach is not, the beach that we had then is not the beach we have now. Since the hurricane, have we changed any of the rules as far as setbacks or requirements because of the danger that now has been shown to us? I mean, we have roads up in Flagler or Ormond that are falling into the ocean, and we have along the river sidewalks and we've had to repair them again and again. We don't have the sand we used to have. We don't. My motel where I grew up is still there. When I was there, you could walk off the grass directly onto the beach. Now there's at least a 20-foot drop, so there's an immense amount of sand that we've lost. And you all know that the tide comes all the way up to the seawalls now. So it is an entirely different world. And before we okay this building or what input, we have the chance now to make the chances. If we could go back in time, we would have not put A1A where we put it. We would have moved it hundreds of feet west. But we have what we have, so now is the time. I just was worried about how they would get cars if they had a large group that was coming to the restaurant. How would they get them through people parking them when you have it so close and that circle that's 3 feet off of that side part? I just wondered how they would really move them through there quick enough to not back up onto A1A.
So there is going to be a parking garage incorporated into the hotel, but they are only doing valet parking to mitigate maybe some of the issues with people trying to self-park.
Do we know how much room there is for
And
the
how
valet
fast
area?
They could get
So
them through
if
there.
you see I'll go back to the plan. If you see the first level plan, they turn in and then there's going to be that circular
Roundabout.
drop off.
Yeah.
But then if you look to the east of the main entrance, it says ramp to parking garages. There will also be the option to turn into that structured parking.
They don't have to use valet there?
They do. They are requiring valet for all of the parking on site.
Yeah.
So there will be a surface level parking that I would imagine would be maybe for temporary parking while the valet handles the vehicles. The applicant can probably speak more to that, but then there will be sufficient parking to accommodate all the principal uses, the hotel, as well as the restaurant and bar, as if they were also a principal use on the property.
I want to expand on that. Thank you, Helen. Two things with, initially with the parking. Any hotel that has valet, they're jam-packed.
Yeah.
So we talked about deliveries on A1A. Imagine cars after cars. You have limited, very limited parking where the valets are going to be. So possibly could they change that requirement to guests that stay there for a longer period of time could move in or something to circumvent that? That's going to be a major issue. Secondly, about seawalls. Looking at this rendition, it says a 6-foot seawall on the south side and a 2.5-foot seawall. Is that, am I saying that correctly? It's part 6 foot and then 2.5 foot.
That's
And
what
I'm
it
looking
says,
at
yeah.
page 9, I think it is.
Tide would come right over.
See, 8 feet.
It's very hard to read it, but
Page 9?
is it on there? I'm sorry.
I'm looking at the attachments to see if I can see what you're referring to.
Yeah, it's that drawing.
I believe that's existing.
Oh, attachment
2.1.
A, the first page, attachment A. If you look at attachment A on the beach,
I don't know that the development plan identifies what type of seawall. This looks like it was superimposed on the survey, and the 2.1 foot concrete seawall, I believe that's an existing feature versus what would be proposed there. We don't have the engineering for this at the PD rezoning level, but the applicant may be able to speak to what may be required of them of the state and federal government with regard to permitting on the ocean. Although I'm unaware that the regulations have changed at present with regard to coastal construction, but I'm not fully up to speed on that either.
and would the developer be open to raising that seawall in 2 years when they plan to either start construction or move with state guidelines that change?
So they will have to comply with state guidelines at time of permitting. So we do require at the site plan level, they have to, show evidence that they have their FDEP permits and for building past the coastal construction control line. But maybe the applicants can speak to what they may be willing to do in the event that there's issues with sea level rise in the future.
Oh.
You're welcome.
I think that's about it for me. I had one question that was just sticking in my mind is, how many new buildings have been built in the past 20 years on the beach? Do you know offhand?
I don't have that information. I don't know if redevelopment has any additional information on that.
5,
Not many.
Yeah.
less than 5. And of course, that's a loaded, that question has the same answer that can mean 2 different things. One, that smart people who go to the Army Corps of Engineers and are aware of what's happening with global warming are less interested in our beachfront because it is so narrow and it is so under attack right now. I mean, have you walked, I'm sure you have walked along the beach since the second hurricane. There are whole sections missing now that will never come back, that will never be back. And that's not something that's going to renourish itself. It cannot renourish itself because of the seawalls. So Army Corps of Engineers, I understand, is giving a substantial grant to Daytona Beach to do work on our ocean front. I'm sure we're going to get federal standards in here very, very soon if we want to accept the money.
Yeah.
And so the state is, the state's getting a lot harder too in coastal construction. And maybe we don't want to make a promise that we cannot keep, that can't be kept in the future. I'm just generally concerned. I'm always conscious of let the punishment fit the crime. You know, it just seems like this is just too much building, too much. I don't fault the developer for wanting to maximize his investment at all, but with a building like this, there's more than just the developer who has his fortunes at stake. There's the city, there are people who live in the area, there are other commercial structures in that area. There's A1A. I mean, there's a lot of consideration. So forgive us if we seem to be nitpicking and have jumped on this, because all you can do is what you can do, given what you have. But it seems like our code or our rules are wanting in several areas at a time of rapid change because of sea level. If you've been to Dade County or Miami recently, I mean, they're undergoing a complete...
If we could...
Pardon me. I will end my comments, but I don't need to be chided by you again, please.
Okay.
And I think we need to be as careful as we can be. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll let the applicant come up and speak now. Thanks.
Yep. Here we have the applicant from Cobb Cole, Rob Merrill.
He can take care of himself.
Hi.
Everybody, I'm Rob Merrill, for the record, with Cobb Cole. I've got a gentleman over here who's been patiently waiting, I think, to smile and hopefully hear a welcome mat from you guys, which I was hoping we'd start with. Eddie Avila, who owns the property, has owned it, I think, since 2006. Yes. Eddie, experienced hotel developer who wants to build a hotel on this property. Gary, I hear you loud and clear. I don't know that there are any questions I can answer for you, but I will say to you that I've been doing this for 35 years. This is all that I do. I've been involved in almost all the projects on the beach. We don't have many. And so I know of one, and I think hopefully you guys have visited Daytona Grand, which a lot of people call the Russian project, because my friend Alexei Lisich built it. Spent north of $100 million, which this is certainly going to be, and it's about the same size as this one. We need 10 of those, or if not 15. I know you guys know this. I've lived my whole life on this island, and I'm a fourth generation resident, Gary. So history, there's my history. We are a tourist destination. It is part of the engine of our economy. It's critical to our existence. We had a big hit this last year, and we've had several in the last 15 years. I agree with what you're saying. We need to make sure it's protected. It's properly managed in terms of environmental impacts, Amy. I get that. I don't have the engineering design for the seawall construction yet, but we're working on that. It's going to be new and better, obviously, like anything that's built on this beach. I've got a handful of other ones that brave souls like Eddie are going to really spend $100+ million. Another one in the shores. I've got another one in Ormond. And we're doing things like the new system they're talking about is the gravity system, where actually behind the seawalls, which a lot of which fell on the beach, we had tiebacks with rebar, with concrete pilings, concrete anchors that held them from falling over. Well, over the years, what happens with the rebar eventually, right? It rots out and it's gone. So nothing's holding the wall. As soon as the water gets over the back, the seawall falls on the beach. So the newest system that I've heard of, and I'm not the engineer, and unfortunately Joe Hopkins, who you guys all know, had something come up, join me, but he's got answers to those questions, and maybe I can try to do my best because he's told me some of it. But they're working on systems like this gravity system where actually a wedge of concrete is buried underground against the wall so that if the water comes over, it's so heavy and tied to the wall, it doesn't fall over. If you go to Daytona Beach shores and you look at the oceans that Belmead built, yeah, the seawalls are bigger. So to your points about whether it was 3 feet, that's just an existing wall that's there.
Yeah.
They will be much bigger. But if you look at those seawalls, they're completely intact. Everything around them is intact. And the reason why, Belmead was owned by Chubb Insurance, so they were very well funded. They built the walls, the seawalls, so that they connected to all of the structures, including the building. Kind of like this gravity system I'm talking about. So that's the kind of thing that we're going to be doing. In terms of renourishing, I understand sand comes and goes. It needs to be renourished in some cases, but it also moves up and down the beach. We know that too. And groins and jetties change that. But at the end of the day, I think that investing $100 million+ to build a nice hotel, you saw the rendering,
It's a beautiful hotel.
Yeah, and as we said, from a size standpoint, Gary, you look at it, and it's hard to understand the perspective, but it's about the same size as the Proto Group Hotel, as the Daytona Grand, same basic configuration, but it's beautiful. So Eddie's got a great architect that's been working on this. That's what we've come up with so far. Ultimately, it's going to be, as Hannah said, four-sided architecture that you guys are going to see and approve as part of the site plan. You know, in landscaped well, I know you prefer hardwoods to palm trees, but this is the beach, you know, so sea grapes, palm trees, that's kind of what lives there. So that's kind of where we are with some of those waivers about the different trees and such. Hannah gave you a very good presentation of what we're proposing. But I would urge you, especially the new members, and by the way, I should have started by thanking you guys because this job doesn't pay, and it takes a lot of time sometimes. And you're doing a good service for the community, so I appreciate it. But when she gives you these packages, they have certain components to them that are really important to your decision. Ultimately, the city commission's decision, but your consideration in making a recommendation. And it starts with, what we call the Bible of land use, which is the comprehensive plan. And Amy was talking about the FAR. And so you guys are probably going to, maybe a couple of you giggle at me for saying this, but we started with the idea that, you know what, maybe we really ought to have this thing be a home run. And the 3 FAR, we should think about the 10 FAR that's the next level. Because we do have 10 FAR in Daytona Beach, allowed some places. We decided, no, we're not going to do a comprehensive plan amendment. We're going to stick with a PD. And the thing about the PD is, you talk about the waivers or how it compares to T1. How many T1 projects you guys seeing built?
None.
0. So the Daytona Grand Hotel was done in a very similar fashion to this with a PD. And like it or not, I mean, it's a beautiful hotel, and it's about the only 4-star hotel we have around with anywhere near the capacity. Now, if you guys spend time on the beach like I do, I'm sure you've seen, I know you have, the cheerleaders that come for 10 days or whatever, they flood the hotels. And they even have to go to Orlando now. So I'm hearing from Alexi, my friend who owns this hotel, the nicest hotel on the beach, we're going to lose them. And that's just one example. But that's a great, convention. Our convention center is fantastic. And we need hotel rooms that are decent for the conventions to continue and thrive. And that's a great.
Decent, Ron. This is a luxury high-rise.
It's phenomenal. And it's got capacity for those people to stay here. They're struggling to try to stay here because they love Daytona Beach. And there's a lot of people that are like that.
Yeah.
I've met a lot of people who come here that say, we love this place, but why does it look like this?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not going to say, I'm not trying to be a wise ass,
No.
but part of what I say to them is, part of it's us. We have an inferiority complex. We tend to push back on people like this that come here and try to invest in our community, and we nitpick them to death. And I tell you, a lot of projects that I've, had approved that didn't get built were in part because of that. So I want you guys to like this project. I want you to send a recommendation up to the planning board and the city commission and welcome this guy to the community and have him be a good corporate citizen. I want you to see the tax dollars that are going to come from this. I want you to see the new convention traffic that we're going to get from this because we've got quality hotel rooms. I want you to enjoy the rooftop, bar and restaurant. I want this to be a quality thing that we all like. If somebody doesn't like it because they don't like the aesthetics of it, I suppose there's always going to be, subjectivity and people have their opinions about stuff. Is it too big? I wish it was twice as big. That's my personal opinion. I don't see that the sky is a limit for this. Are there going to be any effects from it? Well, I suppose the question that was raised about shading, Amy, is a good one. And we haven't, the architect, I don't believe, has done, and they can computer generate these shading studies, and we will before we have a site plan that's finalized, and it'll show it. And I've had one done recently that it's amazing how little the shading really affects very much of the time. For me, I try to find the shade when I'm on the beach. So people prefer that. You can always go 50 feet that way, and you're got some sun. At the end of the day, I think this is a really quality product. I think you've got somebody who's already invested in the land. He's now come forward and he's ready to develop the environment's right because we have a need here. And so with that, I'll answer any questions. You guys asked some questions. I think Hannah did a good job of answering
He
your
always
questions.
does a good job.
And she, yeah, so she makes my job easier. I don't have to get into the details. She's already given all of them to you. But if you had any questions that I didn't answer for you, I want to try to answer them.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask a question because I'm very pro-development, and I see it, it's beautiful what you're doing. What kind of incentives are you gonna, is the developer gonna ask for? And he's a really nice guy, he's a gentleman. What kind of incentives he's gonna ask for other than, what he's asking for now?
Great question. No incentive. And normally, as part of this process, we do that at the same time, because we want to make sure everything's part and parcel. We've asked for no help with this. This is a self-finance project. And by the way, I really, as much as you don't like the fact that Alexi's got some rebar sticking out where he hasn't had all of his pre-sales done on his condo next door, he built that thing himself and didn't ask for anything. First thing I said to him was, this is a CRA, do you want to go talk about incentives? No.
He was a gentleman.
Yeah. So same thing here. You got a guy who's willing to invest and use his money, you know?
Yeah.
Good question, and that's the answer.
How long has he had this property waiting to develop it?
2006. You know, some of
time.
this is, I mean, I can let, if you want to ask him questions about his business intent, he's here to answer, but he's had it for quite some time, so he believes in Daytona Beach, and obviously, money he's going to spend here is significant.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure we can build our way out of the situation we have built our way into. In other words, we have a beach here that was cut in half by the highway. We have property that was originally designated as park and dune property that's been redeveloped, and there are buildings on it and condominiums on it. One of the problems we were hit as badly as we were in the hurricanes was because of the construction line and the quality of construction in a lot, not all, but a lot of the older buildings that are right up on the water. If you've been to Delray, there is not a hotel on the east side of A1A. It's all green space. And there are additional cities on the Atlantic that are now adopting that approach. You can't build your way up out of what we have built ourselves into. And so I love the possibility of a new fabulous hotel. I've been promised that. I mean, the Russian Hotel is a very interesting, nice hotel. I think it might be too big for the location where it is now. It violated the public right-of-way. It hangs over. There were all kinds of accommodations. There was a reimbursement on the water. There were all kinds of things.
You don't like it, I love it. So everybody's got their own opinion.
Hotel. Well, it's not a matter of taste. It's a matter of limited space. We're dealing, you're assuming that there will be no more residents on the beach eventually. Your thinking is going to see the administrative rezoning of the beach to more commercial, which was done when I first came to town in 1974, 75. There was a move to completely eliminate residential zoning on the beachside and go commercial because they knew we didn't have enough space from A1A to the east to satisfy the demand. And the location of the Ocean Center was just another gorgeous building, great. We hope that it'll fulfill its mission now. Same with Peabody Auditorium. We've got a great complex there. But I just don't think you can build yourself out of the problem unless you're extremely clever and you find out from the Army Corps what the new guidelines are, and you get the environmental study, and you incorporate it. When Bray and Gillespie were here, and they were going to build a huge hotel toward Bel Air on the beachfront there, they went through all of they got the environmental, so they did everything, but they couldn't swing the financing. And so that project, you know what I'm talking about, that project crashed and burned, and the land is still there, still sitting there.
Just like the Treasure Island.
Yeah, just like
they own that too.
Just like the Treasure Island. So I'm going to give every consideration to this project because I think it's a fabulous project. I still find it difficult. You know, there's a great Sicilian joke about putting more things in a bag than it can hold and what you get. You know.
So Gary, I'll say one thing about that, and you know, your comments well taken. There are plenty of people, I've run across them, friends and family, that would prefer to have a park between A1A and the ocean, but nobody who owns land there, not one that I know. And there's one guy right there that owns this land.
Well, and, you know,
that's important.
Many redevelopment areas in the state of Florida have gone over to no building. In
I understand.
order to increase the quality of the
That's
redevelopment
it's a
area.
slippery slope for all of us. We will be here.
I'm just suggesting that
Until the morning.
Building is not everybody's answer. for
Get it?
redevelopment.
I get it. That's an opinion. That is not only yours.
I promise you, I will stick to the facts of the matter and apply as much consideration as we possibly can, but I'm wondering if our process, the process we have that has left so many unanswered questions that you can't answer and the staff can't answer because you haven't gotten to the next phase, that's a very odd way to do business. You don't know if you've run out of money until you get onto the interstate and you get to the toll booth.
If there's questions, go ahead and ask them again. That's what I said early. I said, if you got more questions, ask them right now. So Gary, you were saying a lot of things that were statements. Give me the questions.
The environmental study, I think, is a very good, to look at the impact that enormous building is going to have, not only on the beach, but on that whole area, that whole footprint area down there. And if it has a positive one, terrific. If it has a neutral one, great. But if it has negative impacts, that has to be considered. Not in a major way. It's not a reason to stop it from moving forward, but it's a serious consideration. You know, I live 4 blocks from the ocean, and I got a little wind and no water because I live on top of a dune that was not bulldozed and leveled like a lot of the beach was. And a lot of the oceanfront was, when hotels replaced private residences that were all along A1A before World War II. And you're not that old, but I'm sure your mom and your dad.
Well, I had great grandparents. So yeah, I hear you. And so Amy said the same thing. So that was really a statement, Gary, more than a question. But you, I think, raised some questions about what level of study would be done. You know, this is a vacant piece of land. And typically when we're talking about a zoning case on a vacant piece of land, we try to find out if there are any scrub jays that have, you know, nested there, or any gophers that have burrows there, or if there's any flooding issues that we need to deal with. Is it in a floodplain? I mean, obviously this is drained, it's on a dune. Right. We're going to be doing exfiltration, underground drainage here. So although Joe's not here, he would explain to you the details of it. I got a good enough idea that all of the typical zoning level environmental considerations have been handled. So when Hannah said, you know, it says that in the staff report because, you know, our consultants have looked at it and given you the information. That's it. So the next level really is the beach stuff, you know, the seawall stuff, and that is DEP. So we have to get to that level. We've already gotten conversations about that, obviously, because everything on the shoreline now, obviously they're flooded with requests from the engineers that do the seawall construction and make sure that all of the things we do in terms of there's a limited amount of excavation you can do because of the idea that we want to make sure the dune still has dune there, even with whichever side of the seawall it's on. So those things happen as you come through with the permitting process that is outside of this realm, but it's happening. It's going to happen. I wish this board could be armed with every aspect of it, but it's just we're not there yet. So Gary, the idea that we're at a generalized level and we're working towards the more specific, because you guys will see the site plan. You now, as I understand it, the board does see site plans. So you're going to see the details. You're going to see all 4 side elevations. You're going to see all the details about how the stormwater works, you know, whether there's environmental considerations that have been addressed or not. By the time this thing is going to be a project that can really be built. Now we're talking about the concept. So to me, the best thing for you guys to do is look at that.
Yeah.
And that's what you're approving with a PD. Right. What you see is what you get. So, and we've done so many with PDs because you're right. We're negotiating, you know, pinch points here for more trees here, or you know, architectural embellishments that weren't required for some different variation of a setback. That's what happens in PDs. And ultimately, the ones that get built, I think you guys like. I hear what you said about the Daytona Grand, but I like it. So I think we did a great job with that PD. And I think a lot of other, I mean, everything around us pretty much PD. One Daytona, the Speedway is a PD. So I hope that when you look at all of the pieces of this that result in what you see is what you get, that you guys like it. And that's kind of where it ends up with this. Pretty straightforward.
Do we have other questions?
Yes.
Go ahead, Amy.
Okay, the dune is on the outside of the seawall. I don't believe what's inside the seawall can be classified as a dune. So just,
I've got dunes near me, over near the intercoastal. I'm speaking loosely about the way
Right.
islands migrate and.
right, I know.
Yeah.
So the environmental effects of having a seawall is kind of what but you said, DEP handles that. I guess they're going to be, dealing with it.
Well, the county deals with some of the aspects of it's county jurisdiction once you get across the seawall, so
Right.
it's county too.
Well,
So you asked about lighting and turtle effects and such. That's all county jurisdiction when it comes to turtle lighting as well as DEP.
well, it's just points that I want to raise so that the board is aware of what we're getting into here. The idea that having a dune with no seawall is a bad thing is, I'm not really willing to go there. I think, it's just to have a building is not the be-all, end-all. So that's my stance. Nobody else has to have that. But you're saying that hotels are 100% full when the cheerleaders are here? All of our hotels are,
They're
there's
talking
no
about leaving,
rooms?
That's what I'm told.
There's no rooms?
They're talking about leaving and going to Orlando, I think Atlanta, somewhere else.
I think the hotels they'd want to
Yeah.
stay at is what they're saying.
I mean, I think that was published in the newspaper, Hanny. So.
Okay. Because the idea that a luxury condo, with like basically apartments for rent down at the end of Silver Beach is going to funnel people. I assume, if they come, they might, come for a convention and they'd be going to the Ocean Center, but they're not going to come up and shop on Main Street. And they're not going to go to our boardwalk, go to.
Who's they?
go
I
to-
don't
people that stay in this luxury condo.
Okay, so I'm sorry, we got off on the wrong path, I think, and when you said condo, and I think you even have it in your title for this is a hotel. It can be individually owned condos, or it can be wholly owned, whichever one.
But aren't they like apartments with kitchens?
When's that?
Is it a condo-tel?
The size of the room. So people call it condotels, or there's all different variations. Some of them are individually owned hotel rooms, is what it ends up being. It ends up being a financing mechanism, essentially. It operates like a hotel. It is a hotel,
Okay.
and it has to live by the rules of a hotel. So you can't live there.
Okay.
Is it
All right.
going to be like a timeshare situation?
No, that's a whole nother variety of things.
I wasn't.
This is
gonna-
actually run as a hotel. It operates as a hotel by the rules of it's a license as a hotel.
Okay,
But some of the rooms can be owned. You see them. They're
It's like
around
the
here,
same
you
way
don't
the
even know.
plaza operates, correct?
Yeah.
So we'll think of it as a hotel and hotel rooms. But I would suggest that this redevelopment area needs family-friendly activities, amusement parks, cultural facilities, recreational and sports activities, variety attractions, and themed areas, as in the comp plan, the policies stated in this, in our comp plan, more so than another hotel, because the people that stay in the hotels right now are leaving our town because they don't want to go to our boardwalk because it's kind of dingy. They don't want to go to our Main Street because it's not open all the time. So I don't, I'm actually kind of addressing the things in the waiver and benefits letter because it's always a trade-off. You want that big fat setback, reduction, and you're offering us things like more tourist accommodations, like we need that, okay? I don't believe this addresses a community need. I don't think this is going to support our local business community. It says in there 3 times that it's in the core beachside area, which it's at the very tail of the redevelopment area. I think that people that stay at that hotel are likely to going to take their money to South Daytona or New Smyrna Beach, or Ormond. This is my, so I'm not real happy with the waiver and benefits letter. The restaurant and entertainment is not inclusive. It's open to the public, but if you have valet-only parking, you're really, it's an exclusive place. It's not going to be something that like all the people around are going to walk to or visit. Everybody's going to, it's.
Valet's not just for the hotel guests, for anybody who wants.
I understand,
Kind of like
but.
going to the Hiltons.
Right, it's like going to
nice
Hyde Park,
restaurant.
to go to a nice restaurant. But
that's right.
but the statement that a open to the public restaurant and entertainment facility is as presented as like a community benefit, I don't think that's a valid community benefit. And a 40-foot setback change is not a minor code waiver. I don't believe it's balanced by the benefits that are described in that. Now, I want to ask about the neighborhood meeting. Were any changes made to the PD after the neighborhood meeting?
Don't
No.
think so.
Okay, because the staff report, page 8, talks about compatibility with the surrounding areas. Staff has reviewed the proposed development plans and found it to be compatible with the surrounding area. The applicant has conducted a neighborhood meeting as required by the LDC. Okay, now we're within the law. You only had to notify people within 300 feet of this giant building. That's barely across the street. A summary of this neighborhood meeting shows that 14 property owners were notified. And then there's a big sign on the property, of course, that you'd assume if you drove by, you might know about it. But this is a 27-story building, and I think it affects more than just those 14 neighbors. Now, neighbors were told at the developer-initiated meeting that it was going to be 1 year to start and 24 months to build.
Yeah, so what we were telling you was that's what we want to do. So when you do a PD zoning agreement, a lot of these are 10, 20, even 30
Yeah,
years.
this one's 5 and 10.
5, yeah. So that's our ceiling to start. We'd like to get done sooner. So Eddie, if you want to address that again, I mean, we're ready to build. So that was the answer that was given to those based on the business intent.
Okay, so I think the staff, the PD should say 1 year to start and 2 years to build.
Yeah.
And the cities should require a performance bond to assure that we don't end up with a half a building
Yeah.
down the road. The developer-initiated meeting also mentions a height of 295, and now it's 350.
So what we normally do is put a ceiling, and then you work within that. So in this case, I think it's at 290 something, based on the architect's
Right.
design.
But the staff report says
the staff-
350.
It does. So a lot of what happens again in these PDs is you put an outside parameter in, and then you live within it.
Right.
So
But the
350 is
neighbor-
I mean, Amy, if
outside.
you want to,
But the neighborhood meeting, it was represented that it was 295.
and that is exactly what's shown too. So
Oh, all right.
if the question is, what does the PD say? It says what we just agreed to about the 5 years. But if you ask the question, what do you want to do to the developer, he's going to say, I'd like to get this thing done in 2 years, and this is what I want to build. The zoning document is going to give him a little leeway, just the way it's always done.
So my last point on the neighborhood meeting was that the comments were overwhelmingly opposed to the development, and there were two positive comments. Was a couple that came from Ormond Beach. So I'm as far as the concern with the surrounding area, I'm not convinced that we have done our residents and our businesses in that area right by bringing this PD without those taking that neighborhood. Why do we have the developer-initiated meeting? To introduce it to the neighbors and then not regard their comments. So that is about it for me.
Just one very short comment. The Hilton is up the street from my store. We sold a Rolex to somebody who's staying at the Hilton. 3 customers came from Margaritaville. So people do come from the developments. But I just thought I'd toss that in. It does benefit. I'm open all the time. Main Street definitely needs help. But we do business. I hire 4 people and our family members. And we're there till midnight once a week just to keep up with orders and estates. You can only do that when you're closed. So there's business that's, I mean, we certainly benefit from the hotels
That's good.
and Margaritaville of all things.
People.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah,
yeah.
people. Yeah.
One short thing. I live on East ISB. It's a ghost town. There's been no construction for years. The question I wanted to ask you, Rob, it's a hard question, but how many other hotels like this in Daytona or in the surrounding areas? I know developers. I grew up in the developing land myself with my father. I don't think there's any other hotels like this in the surrounding areas, which makes me feel it could be a draw to a more of a bourgeois kind of customer that could bring more money into our city. Is that somewhat?
I can only answer by personal knowledge that I have based on my friendship with the owner of the only other hotel that's like this, that's of this quality and size, and he's full. He's doing great. I mean,
Yep,
he's just
yep.
doing gangbusters, and he, he wishes he had 3 of them.
So I'm agreeing with Helen. I believe it is really going to bring in a lot of customers to my friend's place, Dr. Duva, which he owns Beaches, which is a great thing on my street. So I'm looking to do the other side, someone like that. But I think it's going to be a good thing, and I don't see how spending $100 million beachside is not going to raise up property values all around. I don't see it. I think there's hoops that have to be jumped through. And I think there's, it's never going to be easy, but the man he's a gentleman, he has my support.
Thanks.
He has my support as well. I think it's great for the area, assuming this is on.
You're on.
I still, I don't want to belabor the seawall issue, but not only am I concerned about the seawall on the beach, but on the north side of this, you have an access ramp. And if you look at what's happened along the beach, anything that had an access ramp, that got smashed. So are there plans to put a seawall or some type of construction
A return.
on that side?
Yeah, so right now, we've been working with the county, but they've got a plan for completely redoing Silver Beach, the access ramp there, and I think it does include the return. They're moving the restroom there. They're doing a lot of other stuff, I think, in part in response to what they've had happen in the last year. So,
Good.
I don't have, those are, it's outside of our realm, but we're corresponding with the county about their plans as they update them. So
I mean, if you're investing $100 million,
we want it
you
protected.
don't want that building to
Let,
topple,
Yeah.
right?
goes without saying. So,
Seawalls on both sides.
So, Ray, I'll say one thing, and I say this a lot of times, especially to people, new board members I haven't interacted with. The market kind of decides a lot of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
We can come up with great ideas, and we have good plans and great planners that come up with a better way to do something. But unless the market comes to you and they pay for it,
Yeah.
it doesn't happen. So you're right. It needs to be protected, or he's not going to spend his $100+ million.
And I think I will speak for almost everybody here. We all want this. And I mean, that's why I joined this board, is to see something like this. And this could be another top of Daytona and big draw. So I'm
Thank you.
all for it.
Thanks.
I see your point, and I've been with you your entire career on great projects that you brought to us. As long as the reservations that members of this board have are included in the report as this project moves on, I could support it. But I can only support it if the reservations we have are expressed in our recommendation to move forward. I can't support it if all you're going to say is it passed the Beachside Redevelopment Board 5-2.
Gary, one thing I'll say is, and you probably do know this, but maybe some of the new members don't, whatever happens here, city commissioners are looking at the minutes of all these meetings. A lot of them read every single word, and they ask questions about them. So everything that you said tonight, they're going to read it. So
Hopefully.
I know some of them. I know some of them that have a fine-tooth comb.
Yeah.
And so it's
As long as you realize
this is
that.
not this doesn't just go to the next level and nobody knew what happened. That's just not the way this works. But thank you for saying that. It's important, especially for the others who are making comments.
I think everyone's already addressed my main questions. They're mainly on the seawall and the construction of the building. How deep does he plan to go with the pylons on the building?
Yeah, so I think Joe Hopkins said in the 50-plus
Right.
foot range with
Plus?
concrete.
Okay.
You know, so
That's
it goes
pretty deep.
Yeah.
I imagine if he's spending that much money on our beach
Yeah, I
side,
mean,
he wants it to stay standing.
Of course, and all of this is regulated by state law and stuff too. So it's
I generally tend to be in support of anyone who's looking to build on our beach side, but questions are important. Does anyone else have any questions for Rob?
okay. I'm going to stay here just in case anybody else has any comments or questions.
All right. All right, so now we are moving on to citizens.
We need a motion.
We need a motion.
No motion. Oh, that's right.
No, we have to hear this.
It's the public.
Yeah, we're moving on to citizens' comment. Okay. So first up, we will have Rich Yost. Hello. Hello.
How you doing?
Good.
Appreciate a lot of you guys' comments. I live beachside too. I live on Hartford, across the street from another condo project he's representing. I just have a couple of questions or a couple of points, I guess. You guys have all seen the beach. I mean, she's lived here for decades. She made a comment that she still walk off the grass onto the beach, but it's reduced so much. You brought up good points about the seawall. You sat through the Stetson presentation. I was there too. There are major, significant concerns here. I mean, I can't even have a fire pit on the beach at night right now because of the sea turtles. But we're going to allow this to go in without any kind of consideration? Where's the consistency and logic? You know? I mean, 14 residents is all that was contacted? This is going to affect a heck of a lot more than 14 people, 14 families. And I appreciate that they're going to bring in quality residents. You know, that was another comment made from the last time. But, you know, the people are speaking up pretty loudly right now. We don't want this crap. We want quality things that bring in families. You know, why are we bending the rules to accommodate this? I appreciate that he's willing to invest money, but these are going to sit empty. We all know that. You go to any number of these condos, the vast majority of them are sitting largely empty. The Daytona hotel with the convention center on Beachside, across from Bel Air, that's not a great hotel. I mean, I had family visit there. You couldn't even find a guy at the front desk. You know, it smelled like urine. It was just, it's abhorrent. I mean, how do we know that this isn't going to be the same thing? On top of, I mean, if this washes out another access point to the beach, another ramp, who's going to pay for that? We are. He's not going to pay for that. All of us are. I think the idea of having what do you call it, a
Performance bond.
that's it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. How many projects are on A1A that are completely just half done? I mean, there was just another news article about one that they pulled the building permits for because they never completed it. The economy right now isn't doing super great. They're probably betting on you know, X number of rooms being pre-sold to finance this. The economy is looking pretty crappy right now, right? It's not doing super well. How do we know this is even going to get built out? We all have to live within the rules and the city ordinances. Code compliance comes and just tickets my neighbors like crazy all the time because they've got, you know, debris in their front yard. Well, that's against city code. Well, if I have to live within the rules, he does too. Otherwise, what's the point of having the rules? If I can show up to a meeting and say, hey, I'm going to give you $100 million, and I get to break the rules or bend the rules or change the rules, right? That's not consistent. It's not fair. So, that's all I have.
Thank you. All right. And next up, we have Joanne Reside. They need to state their name and address. Yeah, I will. Hello, if you could state your name and address.
Joanne Reside, 364 Morningside Avenue.
Thank you.
I had something written up, but that gentleman just said it all. I live where Steve Steiner is, where the other proposed property is. It's a monstrosity. It's irresponsible for anyone to be building east of A1A, let alone anything of these building capacities. So I'm just against it. It's bad for our neighborhoods, and we're not happy.
All right. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Sandy Murphy.
Good evening, Sandy Murphy, 136 Park Avenue. I think building a hotel on this property makes sense, but building a 27-story hotel on this property does not. This isn't our core tourist area where the Russian project is. This isn't next door to the Ocean Center where the cheerleaders want to stay. This is adjacent to a neighborhood. There's no transition between this 27 stories and that neighborhood, and I think that's something that needs to be taken into account. Seems like a looming, hulking presence, and we don't know that it's not going to have an adverse effect on the neighborhood. That's the other thing that we heard here tonight is with the extreme weather that we're getting, how will this property make a difference at 27 stories high to what happens to those properties behind it? Maybe it'll be good, maybe it'll be bad, but we don't know, and we should know that before we approve a PD on this property. They say they're ready to develop, but 5 years to to pull a construction permit is too long, and it's for two reasons. Repeatedly, we have these lengthy time requests, and what we are doing is we are increasing the value of this property for the developer. I think that if in that period the property is sold, the PD should expire with the ownership, because otherwise what we are doing is we are just gifting extra value to the property owner, and I don't think that there's any reason that we should be doing that. Second thing is that we know that climate change is already having a big impact on our area, and now we're talking about 5 years into the future. It seems too early to authorize this kind of use when we know so little about what is going to be happening to our beach, and it seems like that's something that our city needs to be addressing urgently, and maybe if we had a little bit more information on how things would be going on the beach, a better decision, a more informed decision on this project should be made. If it's going to take 5 years, then let's wait and figure things out a little bit better. The applicant is asking for a PD, and what I think that people tend not to understand is a PD is not a right. It's something that you can ask for, and you can either get or you can be denied. There's no absolute necessity to give an applicant everything that they're asking for. So if there are pieces of this that you as a group don't feel are appropriate for that site, please make that part of your motion, because that is the only thing that's going to get the attention of the commission. Not just the plus, the votes in favor or against, but unless that's in your statement that you want to see certain things change, they will just be going ahead with what's being presented by the developer. So make sure that your points are being heard if that's something that you think is important, and I think you've said a lot of important things.
Thank you. All right, Miss Ann Ruby.
Ann Ruby, 137 Park Avenue. I would take it a step farther than Sandy had said. And actually, if you have reservations and things you want put it in the PD, because I have seen too often board recommendations get passed along and shuffled along, and they never make it to the PD, and the commission doesn't pay attention. And unless citizens show up and say, hey, what about that recommendation? It doesn't get in the PD. So if you want to see an environmental study, if you have other concerns, adverse effect on the neighborhood study, put that requirement in the PD. Don't just make it a recommendation, because that will just get shuffled along and it will not get acted on. I think there are several things that are kind of driving this. We have to do this now because we need the hotel rooms. The plaza is closed. The plaza will be open in a year. They're asking for 5 to 10 years to get this off the ground. We have the E-zone plan you mentioned. I'm not a fan of the E-zone plan, but that proposes several high-rise hotels in the core tourist area. Consolidated Tomoka just bought a ton of Main Street. I suspect they're going to probably propose a big high-rise hotel over there. There is no reason that we necessarily need this project in 5 to 10 years, and that you have to vote on it in a panic tonight. If it's so desperately needed, why the long time frame? Rob says they're ready to go. But that's not what they're asking for, so they don't have to go next year. And the other thing for me is it's too big, the time frame's too long, it's too close to the ocean, it's too soon after 2 tropical storms that devastated our beach. And we don't have a plan. We need a long-range plan, not just in how we're going to nourish and preserve our beach, which is going to take billions of dollars. Who's going to pay for that? That's going to be tax dollars. Let's not kid ourselves. And then we also need a plan for how are we going to handle when devastating storms come through and just devastate the property. Who's going to cover that? I have Citizens Assurance. They're telling me that they're going to assess me if there's a catastrophic loss and they don't have reserves. So what's going to happen to this building? Are they going to self-insure? Are they never going to come for the government handout to help rebuild them after their $100 million investment is destroyed by a storm? We can't guarantee that. Yes, they will bring in tax revenue. They will eventually when they're built. But is that going to be at the expense of our kids' future and what they're going to have to pay? We need to come up with a development plan for our beach that's long-term before we approve something this close, this big, in such a long time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, we have John Nicholson.
John Nicholson, Daytona Beachside. Several things. One, when it was brought up that he bought the property in 2008, you've got to remember what happened in the past. In the 1990s, or late 1990s, we were discussing what we were going to do with development on the ocean front. It took 4 years. No development happened because we were waiting. Some of you remember what happened in 2004. There was a devastating hurricane. 4 of them, as a matter of fact. We've never had that before. Right. So all these properties that we had, the old hotels, were going under like lemmings. People were buying 3 and 4 because we just said that if you buy wider properties, you can go higher. So people were buying. And then what happened in 2008? Recession. It's not the gentleman's fault that we had a recession. All right? We're talking about a recession now. That's irrelevant. These things happen over time. There was talk about the seawalls. The buildings had absolutely nothing to the failure of the seawalls. Absolutely nothing. Nothing happened to the buildings. The seawalls fell for a reason. We had 2 hurricanes back to back. We lost our beach. The water came over, and they fell. They were old. I walked past them. Okay, the ones that had metal backing, they were all rusted. Obviously, they would fail. All right? There are reasons that these things happened. Now, I love the building. We have some very, very bland buildings. If you go to other cities, they're fantastic buildings. They're icons. We have none of those. This is a very unique building. I hate the base. I hate the base that he's got in the other property. There's these huge, massive cement blocks. And if you live across from them, it's horrendous. I live across from Windward. It took Anderson 19 years to get that building built. 19 years of going through problems. So 5 years to me is nothing, all right? They have a system. They said, okay, we don't know what's going to happen, so give us a little leeway. 5 years. That seems reasonable to me, all right? Secondly, when you look at certain things, like the height limits, 295, 290, who knows what's going to happen? So they do 350. Because who wants to go through this starting from ground zero, spend another year because you went 5 feet over? That's why they have that wiggle room. Trees, that's my big point. Rob back here and I fight all the time over trees. I hate the city's concept that no trees grow on Beachside. I live on Beachside. I have 20 trees. I have huge trees. My neighbors have huge trees. Trees will grow on Beachside. I'll talk about the rest of it later.
Thank you, John. Next, we have Jenny Nazak.
Jenny Nazak, 501 Harvey, smack dab in the Main Street tourist area. I love our little city of 70,000, however many people, and I think it's really neat that we have this great capacity of welcoming tourists. It's hospitality. It's cool. That said, I do think that it's easy to get kind of bamboozled by numbers. Like, we'll start adding up sales tax dollars and how much money someone's investing in a building, and we'll equate that with that's somehow coming to the residents. And that money doesn't necessarily do that. And we also don't always take into account how much value a full-time resident puts into the city every day, spending into the economy in an ecological web of relationships. I mean, it'd be very difficult to do that accounting, but we have to acknowledge that it's a force, that it's huge. So one of the values that creeps into our developments is that we'll say, oh, well, there aren't going to be any full-time residents. There's just going to be people staying there, or it's just going to be an investment property, as if that's better, as if somebody using our town as a monopoly board is like better than if residents were living in those little condos. Just something to think about, irrespective of the building itself, like the form of the building and the type of the units, those could be full-time residents that would be woven into the whole social fabric of the neighborhood. That is a big building, but the fellow residents have addressed their concerns. With that in mind, I want to weigh in about the landscaping, of course. If we drive down to Ponce Inlet, Wilbur, lots of other parts of the island, there's many, many oak trees, palmetto, the classic beach vegetation. And a lot of cities are going back in the more classy direction. Like, a lot of cities are recognizing, hey, this is the natural, authentic beauty. Like, chemical turf grass and waxy plants that look fake are really, they look weird next to the ocean. They just look weird. And so the more, if we say, hey, palm trees, yes, because the sable palm, by the way, is Florida's state tree, and Florida's iconic state tree. And if they're allowed to have their full crowns, they can have a lot of shade. But oftentimes, oaks and palms grow together. That's like the natural form. So we can have all of that, palm trees, shade, and all that. The city of Daytona Beach no longer excessively trims its palm trees. Thank you, city of Daytona Beach. Maybe we can encourage property owners to not mutilate their palm trees. Yes. Most of the trees that died in the hurricane on the ocean front were the ones where the hotels do this to their trees. So maybe we could encourage some sensible landscaping. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jenny. All right, well, now, comments?
Yeah. What does
comment now? Or?
Yeah, this is where the board does its comments.
Yeah. What does the board think of including a few painless conditions on a yes vote?
150%.
Like an environmental study, I think would be, I just can't imagine you putting $100 million into a property you wouldn't want an environmental study
Absolutely.
to help you, with the design. The design might be, have anticipated that, and it might be just something waiting to happen. And perhaps, I think the environmental study, to me, is critically important. Now, the height thing, that it can go up 75 floors higher, but that's just the maximum in the code, but they're going to go at a certain height. Let's see if the builder will specify the height, or lower. And so I had heard from the neighborhood meeting, too, that they were getting some conflicting information about how big the building was going to be, whether it was going to be public or private, a hotel or condominium or both. And it was a very, I don't think it was a very pleasing public meeting, which is contrary completely to why we included a public meeting and notice to neighbors. I think we need to look at that ordinance and expand it, because it's obviously, if this is what we're getting, it's not doing the job. So I could move forward knowing that we're the first rung on the ladder.
Could I add one thing?
Yes, sir.
Not to be, I like the idea of making it putting a time limit on there so we don't have a project that doesn't get done. And I like the idea of requiring a performance bond.
I do too.
You know,
You want to add those two with an environmental study. Let's try and keep it
Very
something
simple.
that we know is doable. We certainly don't want to torpedo this project by adding something
Beautiful
that
project.
can't be done. But these three things, to me, are de rigueur. I mean, why not? And so I would support a motion that included these three items: a definite height or less, a top number in the PD. Not that the PD can go up to 350, but we're only suggesting at this point 275 or whatever the language was. The environmental study, I think, is going to be absolutely required within 5 years for any construction on beaches anywhere in the United States that are subject to high water. So with those three options, I like the performance bond. I think that's a great idea, too. I'm glad that surfaced. That gives some sort of comfort, I think, to people who are dissuaded because they've seen projects sitting half-built. I've lived here 40 years, and I've seen a lot of construction on the beach begin and stop, and it becomes a ruin, like in the 18th century in England. And so somebody comes in and tears the whole thing down and comes back to the city and wants a little more, a bigger bite of the apple. We had a lot more beach then, and I respect this effort, and I certainly hope that these three conditions, unless my colleagues have a fourth you'd like to add, wouldn't damage the integrity of this proposal.
I would like to add a seawall proposal, study, and what they expect to do. That gravity seawall sounds fantastic. There's nothing in this proposal that even touches on that. I think that's a mandatory requirement to have that to approve this.
I think that might, in the environmental study, I think it was going to touch on seawalls.
Yeah,
I mean,
we could add that to the environmental study.
5 years ago, there were two islands between Miami and Miami Beach that were developed, and they decided that they would use the state-of-the-art seawalls. The water came up 12 feet. It wasn't even up, it never even touched the seawall. It was already so high that the seawall was just a figure 20 feet under the surface of Biscayne Bay.
But
So,
with this current proposal, we have no idea what size the seawall
correct,
is going to be.
correct. And
And
the
is
big
it going to be
loser-
on one side or two sides?
And the big loser is, if there's something goes wrong, is the public. And a public beach, a county beach, and an environmentally sensitive beach, becoming more sensitive as we have less and less of it. So I would support that. A seawall, how do you want to phrase
Before-
it? A seawall study or?
Okay.
Amy?
May I make one more comment before we phrase our motion? I think that something that I didn't talk about, and I don't know the numbers on this, but the value of the beachfront condos is dropping because of the assessments that people are getting now. And I don't know if anyone would disagree with that. Condo owners are getting hit with huge assessments that they never expected. So a lot of them are going to be selling, and prices are going to be dropping. So I think even those that were built to current building regulations are struggling to repair pool decks and seawalls. So I think the commission has to consider what our future is going to look like, and whether it's going to be, whether we're going for a Miami and big buildings, because just to have one, then the next property is going to want one, and the next, and the next. So is that really something that we want to see? And I personally disagree that large developments on the ocean are the only way for our redevelopment area to improve. So I may always be on the outside, and that's okay, but I'm going to pull us towards taking care of what we have and, improving on the small things and being very careful with large developments, especially on the ocean. So if we're going to frame a motion with those requirements. I really appreciate that of this board, and I think that's an excellent and responsible way to do it. I may still vote no, but if it moves forward with those, that's encouraging from me, and if any of you,
It will at least ensure discussion of these items at other boards.
right.
Nice to make them aware.
Yeah, it'll make them aware that.
So I think the seawall discussion can be a part, like if we say, we need to see, and if the environmental impacts, including
Seawall.
wind, shade, and
Seawall.
beach erosion.
Yeah.
Beach erosion. It's not just
Somebody take
how
this
they
down.
built the seawall. Wind, shade, and sea, and,
Protection against beach erosion.
right, and wind of the inland, how it affects inland.
We're learning a lot with these terrible hurricanes.
And then the performance bond, and are we saying 1 year to start and 2 years to complete? Is that what our,
I'm not as adamant about that, but I think there might be a time, some sort of,
That process for development can take a long time because
Yeah.
as they're jumping through the hoops, 1 year might be a little difficult and not fair to ask. So I only know because my grandfather, I grew up in the family, we used to develop most of Maryland when I was young.
what about the
1 year is to apply for the permits. 1 year to apply for the permits.
the non-transferability of the permit was raised also, that rather than have this thing being shopped out and,
Yeah.
a group comes and says, I want to, now I'm interested in it because you already have a PD kind of.
Well, a big part why they have my support is this fella invested some years ago and he sat on the property, has some invested interest into making it beautiful. That's part of the reason. And the other part of the reason, if he's definitely the developer, we know that he has invested interest here in our community. I don't want people to come here and say, there's a saying, I used to build houses with my father, and it said, you won't see the mistakes from my house when they made a mistake. So we're going to see this, we're going to see it as a beautiful thing or a mistake 20 to 50 years down the road, hopefully, if I live that long.
Well, this is a big change. This
Absolutely.
building is a really,
It's gorgeous.
it's a flag in the sand, so to speak. It's a big
Absolutely.
change, so let's do the best we can to help him succeed, but also protect, some of the other.
Well, we're protecting the residents and protecting the developer because if the better that seawall is and the more work that we do to make sure that we're protecting his $100 million investment and we're protecting our community and our residents is how I see it.
Problem is the seawall is only the length of his property.
Right, he's going to protect his investment with an excellent seawall.
Yeah.
My concern is
the
that
neighbors.
how seawalls affect the beach erosion.
Right.
Period. And so if that's included in your recommendations, that's,
Yeah, and how much tax revenue will that property produce more than likely for us? We don't know, do we?
Nope, I don't think we.
I don't think we do. Yeah.
they'll just say more than a vacant
So how
lot.
do we go about this?
Well, does staff, do you folks want to help us draft these conditional motions that we'd like applied to the PD in order for us to support this project unanimously?
So your recommendations for, you got four issues. One issue is dealing with the seawall. There's a recommendation to adhere that there is a seawall appropriate for the development. And these are just all recommendations.
No, these are going to be parts of the PD.
No, you, as a board, you can only recommend.
Right, and we are
it's up to
recommending.
the-
that
We're
these-
recommending that
these
they
be
put
part
those
of the
parts.
That's all you're doing.
Okay, so to make sure that I'm understanding it, to convey to the people that draft the PD and are going to review the actual agreement, you're wanting to include into the PD agreement that prior to site plan, that they have to provide an environmental study that addresses,
Beach erosion,
well,
seawall.
that addresses
Wind?
wind, the impact of the shade on the environment, and beach erosion. You want to have a more specific height,
Right,
a lower height maximum,
max up to not to exceed height. Yeah,
lower than what they're currently proposing.
correct.
Okay, and a performance bond to ensure that it's completed, and so those three things.
Anybody
Well, what we
The
talked about,
environmental
1 year.
study.
The environmental
1 year,
study.
2 years?
Right,
or-
the environmental study, which included the wind, the shade,
5
and
years?
beach erosion, which
Yeah.
would
I would say
cover the seawall.
Yeah.
2 years and 5 years is fair on the performance bond. Yeah.
No, they're all recommendations.
Yeah.
Let's go back to height. What is your height that you're recommending?
What do they say they want to build?
Well, the PD right now gives them up
right
to,
now is
I think it was
350.
3.
No, they have they
Yeah.
told the neighborhood group that it was 200 and something feet, right?
295.
Pardon?
295.
295.
Clarify here for
Actual
us.
is 295, we can stick with that.
Okay, 295 or less, you know.
Okay, all right, so 295.
fine with me.
We were looking for wiggle room.
I'm giving you this one. This is a Christmas present. This one.
We'll get rid of the wiggle room.
Okay. Okay.
I want to say just one thing while you guys are talking about the conditions. I appreciate what you're doing because I think it's an appropriate thing to try to be positive and say, but, yes, but. The timing thing is tough, though. I get you guys.
I'm nervous about that,
In our
too.
world,
me
you
too.
have to understand that we haven't even started the site plan process, the engineering of this, to fully engineer it. That takes time, too. And then the site planners are usually only good for 1 year. You know, so there's processes that come after this.
What if we have non-transferability of the PD?
I don't know if that's legal.
I don't know if we can do that.
Let your attorney
No.
do that.
No.
We've always said that it becomes the zoning on that property, regardless of what you do. I think you run into some problems, Gary, by doing that.
Well, you don't know until you try it, right?
Well,
You're an attorney.
I'm just going to tell you that I can't give you a legal opinion about that. I don't think that changing a zoning on a piece of property can be personal to an individual. I don't do that.
I agree.
I think we got a good guy here who wants
Okay.
to do this.
All right, okay.
But if he gets somebody in who's interested in spending $100 million, okay, we like all of them.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, I think the timing thing, you guys being a little bit, 5 years is quick for any PD.
All right, well, let's
$100
go with the,
million
go with the
It's
5
5.
years and a
Yeah.
performance bond.
A performance bond would be important to make sure it gets completed. The time probably wouldn't be it wouldn't be as important, but the performance bond to make sure it's built so we don't have another.
I would suggest to you that you any performance bonds, which is a legal construct, that you need to make sure that your city attorney is involved in whether it
Oh,
can be done, and if
absolutely.
so how. That's all I'll say. I'm not going to try to give you my legal opinion. There are legal aspects to what you guys are saying
Because-
that are not.
Yeah, just a recommendation.
Yeah,
Right.
Well,
Sorry, go ahead.
Might be go ahead.
right now, you're actually just doing the zoning of the property. It's not the actual
It's just the zoning.
zoning, it's not the actual construction of the
Right.
project. They can come in, it would be more at the perhaps site plan level of a condition of the site plan of having
Okay.
something at this zoning level.
So
I
it's
agree
non-applicable
completely,
at this
but we're
level.
trying to make sure that boards above us understand the reservations that should be in the minutes of this meeting.
It's on the
Because
record, so.
Yeah, on the record, but seriously on the record, not just discussion. But I mean, these are conditions
Yeah.
that we feel are the most important.
So Gary, I would suggest, because I've been wrestling with this on the other project where people have talked about
Right.
should have bonded for a private improvement, which doesn't happen. I think what you could say is, within the legal bounds of guarantees that could be made that something gets built, that you want that. I think
That's-
everybody understands where you're
That's
coming
good
from.
enough for me,
So
but that's
nobody
not
wants to have
it's
built
not a
something who-
performance.
That's good enough for me,
That's
too.
happening, right?
Right, I think you're right.
That's the easiest way to say it, I think,
Yeah.
without getting into the word
Yeah,
bond.
it's like a performance, it's sort of, kind
Well,
of.
and it gives a lot of different options
Right.
of what could take place
Right.
to get it.
Would you accept that as an alternative?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. So do you have this down, Madam Attorney?
Okay, let me make sure that I have everything. So the motion would be to recommend approval of the project with the following conditions. One, an environmental assessment that at a minimum addresses the impact of wind that the project would create, the impact shade from the project would create on the environment, and the impact of beach erosion would have on the environment, including how the seawall, when built, would impact the beach erosion.
Correct.
You have to a maximum height of only 295 feet.
Only 295 feet.
Let her
Yeah.
finish.
Eliminate only.
Up to 100,
Yeah.
up to 200,
Yeah, that's,
295
that's
feet.
more in keeping with what our recommendation.
Okay, just making sure. And then having some type of legal requirement related to the timing of the
Right,
project.
Right,
Yes.
okay.
Is there anything else?
Were we gonna put something on, permitting needs to be done by 2 years?
No, that's what we're saying.
Okay.
That's
Yeah,
what we're saying.
I don't think we can do that.
Yeah, we can't put a,
We could say that, it's never going to happen because it's out of everybody's hands.
I think that covers it.
Yeah.
You guys?
Would you mind reading that back to us?
Oh, God.
I
think we're good. We heard it, we're fine.
Okay.
Are we ready for a motion to approve on
Yeah,
those
I'll
conditions?
also move we approve the presentation, the project presented to us by Mr. Merrill, but with these caveats. And the caveats have been repeated by our attorney. We're all in agreement on what they are. And also move
I move.
This will be
Second.
approval.
That was the motion. It's seconded. All right. So everyone in favor?
Roll call.
Do we roll call or aye?
Have to roll call.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Aye. All right. There we have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. See you soon. All right. Now we're on to new business? No, we've done new business. Now we're on to old business.
We have the Peninsula Club.
She's not here, so.
Well, I believe they were going to still,
Are they still going to present? or-
they're not going to present, but I thought Mr. Libby just wanted to say what that was.
Yeah, I had an opportunity to speak to Sheila McKay Vaughn, former Commissioner Sheila McKay Vaughn, who is helping the Peninsula Club come back to life after COVID. It's been closed up for almost 3 years. It needs to be painted. It needs minimal renovations in order to be habitable, but there are already people requesting use of it, rental use of it from the city, and I think it might fall under the umbrella of redevelopment in the South Atlantic area. Peninsula Club is given to the city by the Peninsula Juniors, by a group that would like to re-meet there and pay rent to meet there. And I asked Mrs. McKay whether or not Parks and Recreation had a budget for maintenance on the building, and she seemed to think they had a minimal, a touch-up kind of thing. But I went down and looked around down there, and it really needs, I think the city wants it to be presentable. It's an older building, but it's a great building, and there really is no public assembly space on that south section of our area, other than the Peninsula Club. So I hope when she comes back, she was invited to Ghana, to Accra, the capital of Ghana, by an official in the Ghanese government to do some things there. When she comes back, I'm sure we will hear from her and perhaps other representatives, but that's what the proposal would be, to give them some help beyond what their maintenance budget provides to make that building habitable and ready to go for rentals and for weddings. I've been to several weddings there. I'm sure you have too.
I'm confused for a moment. The Peninsula Club or the Palmetto Club?
Pardon me.
Where is it located exactly?
It's across the street. It's right next to the veterans, the new veterans at the library.
Yeah. I know now which one.
Yeah.
It looks great, that statue that they put.
Yeah.
Not a statue, but.
What is it mentioned in the, what's the name they give us in the
It's Peninsula Club.
Peninsula, yeah.
Yeah, it's Peninsula Club.
Not Palmetto.
Not Palmetto. Yeah, it had me confused a little bit as well.
Now, I'd like to ask Kent, do you think that's, sort of falls under the rubric of something that we could look into?
Well, as part of being an asset of the city, it falls under the Parks and Rec Department, so we would have to refer to Parks and Rec first before we consider doing anything, and that's what we'll do before the next meeting.
It is a named facility in the South Atlantic Redevelopment Plan. Yeah. And I think that gives us the doorway, to go to Parks and Rec. I agree.
yeah.
I agree.
And this is the type of project, like, where the Public Works that would probably actually do the improvements could seek to use, ask to use CRA funds to do that. So
Correct.
that's really the brings it back around to it.
Correct. The discussion was whatever they had budgeted would not be enough to completely do the facility. And I don't think, as a resident of Daytona Beach for many years, that we want to open a building for rental when we have available money over here that is eligible for use over there. And so I'd like us to see us get together and help bring that building back, because it is a historic building and it's a major public assembly resource. It's a very great building. And if the veterans get put in their parking lot, as they keep telling me they're going to do, then we'll have additional parking there, which is a challenge in that part of the city.
All right. Thank you, Gary. Any other comments on that? No? All right. So now we're on to old business.
Did you want us, Kent, to move that we are going to participate in some degree? Maybe I should have made my comments in the form of a motion.
We don't need a motion at this time.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna carry this forward to the next meeting.
Okay.
If Ms. McKay is available.
Okay.
And so we'll put this on the next agenda.
Next agenda.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we'll have some information from our Parks and Rec department, if they're planning on making any improvements or painting, or because I believe that's what she wants.
Okay. Well, we're moving on to old business
Yeah.
now. We're on old business.
Old business. It's so long ago that we discussed and the board moved that you would share with us a pro forma on the purchase of the Corbin building. And for a variety of reasons, and we were, a little huffy because we were the last ones to know about it. We had to read about it in the newspaper that the city had purchased the Corbin building with, I guess, a majority of redevelopment funds from the Main Street. And I'm just wondering if you feel that, are you comfortable in sharing with us some of the facts about that purchase? Now, it has reduced income to the redevelopment zone by taking the building off the tax rolls. It has affected the hospital tax. It has affected ECHO. It has affected Forever. It's reduced. It's a big building, and I don't know how many millions of dollars we paid for it. I don't know what the appraisal valuation is. But it's the data that would make us feel a little more having participated in this big move on the part of the city to save that building. And I support it 100%, and I like what I think are the plans to develop it in the future, but I think it might help if we had that on the record. The second item you were going to get back, there were three items, were in the last budget you gave us after we requested looking at the budget that you operate, there were 4 line items that said grant 1, $75,000, grant 2, $75,000, grant 3, $75,000, grant 4, $75,000. I think it was 75 or 50. And there was no organization named. There was no footnote, which is usually the audit requirement when that kind of information is put in at least an auditable budget. And I was just wondering, is the redevelopment area giving grants to Friends of the Band Shell? Is it giving grants to any other organizations, 501c3s, grants now of large amounts of money, not agreements that the city has from the get-go, but and if so, what's the process for an organization to apply to the redevelopment area for a grant, and who evaluates the grant?
Let's go back to your first question. Let's clarify what you want regarding the Corbin building. What is it that you want for the Corbin building?
A pro forma. A pro forma will show the taxable value of the building, the asking price, the price the city paid for the building. We'll also show any budgeted improvements that the city intends to make in the building and the mission, its purpose, its function, why we are buying property in a redevelopment area and taking it off the tax rolls. Now, when the Urban Land Institute came and did a major study of the Main Street redevelopment area, they were amazingly shocked that the city was urging private property owners to tear down buildings and apply to the county for reduced taxation and then use the property for special events, and thought we were going in the wrong direction. And that, the Urban Land Institute study, new members of the board, you really should take a look at. It's a really eye-opener, and the merchants on Main Street paid for it. It was paid for by Teresa Doan, who led a group of business people, and it was just something that was floating around. I think somebody might have asked a question or something, and I thought, well, maybe that will also be good for you, Kent, to
No,
look.
I don't know what the benefits of doing a performer today when we bought the building. I mean, it's almost a year now that we've owned the building. I don't know the benefits of bringing to this board a performer. I don't know how it's going to help, but I can bring you a summary of what we plan to do with the building.
Great.
So that would be helpful.
But you know what it cost.
Going forward.
You know what it cost because there was a debit out of the trust fund.
We have that information.
Okay.
We have some visions of what we want to do with the building that we will share. But we'll, of course, we're a long ways off from doing anything at the building at the moment.
Now,
because it's all based on the economy, of course.
what you would want to do to the building would most certainly be funded out of the trust fund, wouldn't it?
I'm sorry?
I said, what you want to do with the building would certainly be funded in whole or in part with some redevelopment dollars.
Not necessarily.
Well, but not necessarily not either.
We spent money to purchase it, so we don't necessarily want to put any more money into it.
Okay.
So.
Well, that's part of a pro forma, yeah.
Well,
Just give us, we knew nothing but what we could read in the newspaper. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I was somewhat surprised. I was glad that it happened. We heard about it at a meeting. Teresa was here and shared that information with us. But none of the details, and I was chair, and I got some telephone calls about why did the city buy the Corbin building, and from one man, a major restaurateur in town, who wanted to buy the building and put a restaurant in there. So I think it just would help me be more responsive to people in public information that is public. It's not anything that's exclusive, not violating sunshine laws by knowing a little bit of information, because it was trust fund dollars that did purchase the building.
right. And your second question regarding the grants, we'll take a look at it.
Yeah, what does that mean? I mean, just, I'm for grants. I think it's great. I would love to see this board look into doing something with Peabody Auditorium that would make the use of Peabody easier for sponsor presenters. Right now, we have lost a tremendous amount of business from Peabody that usually filtered onto Main Street and went to the restaurants and bought things in the shop, bought newspapers, bought jewelry from.
She walked into my
Yeah.
store
And
bought something in his full tail. Oh, that was
Yeah.
okay. Well, I have your.
Please speak into the microphone.
So I'm very in favor of grants.
Yeah.
At one time, we did facade grants. At one time, we helped
Still
people
do.
paint their buildings. We
Yeah, we
did,
still do. We still offer those things.
Yeah.
but we didn't do I would love to see us consider working with Peabody, because the money stays in the city, making it easier for sponsor presenters to bring major things to Peabody Auditorium. I think I spoke to, I believe it was the manager, on some really important events that could come to our city that haven't come just because of the spider web of costs and things associated with the use of Peabody Auditorium by major
Yeah,
companies.
absolutely. Yeah.
And you and I I think, had a good conversation about it as well. So I'd love to pursue that, and I'm wondering if members of the board would be interested in how we might stimulate more people in the Main Street redevelopment area through a better use, a more aggressive use of Peabody by helping them with their overhead costs out of the trust fund. Think about it. Let's think about it maybe and discuss it at our next meeting. Madam Lawyer, did I do that properly?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Even I can learn.
I thought Ms. Humphries had a question.
I'm going to pass.
Okay.
Yeah,
She's,
I think we've
she
covered.
has a question.
All right. I think that's all the old business
No,
we have.
no, she has.
I'm waiting for board comments.
Oh,
Yeah, we're not
my
there quite.
my thing is what I wanted to interject is there's a lot of redevelopment areas. You got you have Main Street and then you have South Atlantic. When people come across that bridge, we need to figure some way, because there's a lot of residents I talk to, they don't know a lot what those grants are. Now I know Ken, that you're very knowledgeable and you've tolerated me multiple times. But a lot of the residents, we need to let people know what these grants are, what they are, what we can do, and how we can beautify East ISB, because right now it gives a very bad message. Years ago, don't hold it against me, I was a used car salesman. My grandfather had the largest Ford dealership in the world at one time in Baltimore, Maryland. And, well, when you look at a car and the car's all dirty, usually you would not sell the car. You got to wash the car up as it comes in. So what I'm trying to figure out is how can we beautify things, starting not just on Main Street, but East ISB, which is the most heavily traveled road coming in, and that's what they're judging us by.
It's coming. It's
Getting
coming.
cleaned
East
up.
ISB.
That one.
They've got it torn up right now. I had to go around,
Yeah.
Okay, so
It's coming.
It's already
I'm-
in the plans.
I'm very excited.
And it's a gorgeous, gorgeous plan, I'll tell you.
Thank you.
We
Business?
didn't, we didn't deal with the old business yet.
That was old business.
Old business.
No, 20,
No, we haven't dealt with old
2023
business.
ethics training.
Oh,
We haven't dealt with that yet.
Yeah. So those are the two items that we had on for old business.
All right. Well, ethics training, what do we have to say about
Yeah,
that?
ethics training. So by the state of Florida requires that each board member has to go through their ethics training. And I believe we have if you're interested, we have a face-to-face training this month.
Tomorrow.
It's tomorrow.
Tomorrow. What are the times?
9.
9 in the morning.
Yes. May I say something?
I started on a laptop to
can't-
go online and do our thing, and went through the whole thing, but didn't see anywhere where I could say it was me or that you knew I was the one doing it. So
I can comment on that.
Yeah, you can.
When you log in, you put in your email and you hit register.
well, I was using someone else's laptop.
Oh,
I-
right, but you would have had to put your
register.
email.
No, I
and hit
didn't.
Oh, well, then I don't know if you were on the same one that I did, but I did the whole thing. But my question would be, I had to go in, and, I did a half an hour at a time or 45 minutes, and then I'd go back and I had to kind of start over
Right.
and then forward the thing. So if it shows up that I did it and I only did like the last 30 minutes, then I'm telling you, I did the whole thing. You can ask me questions.
You want to verify by signing a
Well,
signature.
so-
We
Yep.
went through the training. Is that the legal way we do it? Yeah.
Well, actually, the city clerk, they have the way to notice that you did the training.
Yeah.
And you have to turn your affidavit as well.
The affidavit, yeah.
Yes.
Do you have, will you bring affidavits?
I send it to you by email, but I can,
Okay,
I can
that
have
would be great.
a
Thank you.
copy for you.
I've already done it. I believe, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
So
There
do
were
you
no
need an
major
affidavit?
changes from the last time.
Do you need an affidavit back from us, or do you?
Well, I send it to you.
Okay.
All the documents is in the attachment, but we can talk.
Okay.
I can.
Yeah, and
I
I'm
can
not
guide
gre-
you to the process.
I'm not great
I'll
on a
find it.
computer.
Okay.
And I have eyesight problems, so that's why I use the laptop waiting in a doctor's office.
Well, I can bring a copy of the attachment
Okay.
for the next meeting.
Thank you.
If you agree.
Thank you.
All right. So now we're done with old business?
Board member reappointment?
The
Board member
reappointments as
reappointments?
well, yes. For the ones that their terms end, remember that you have to reapply, please.
Okay.
So since this is a lot of brand-new people, that is not going to be an issue
Yeah.
just yet.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, you'll let
We'll
us
make sure
know
to
when our
reapply.
terms are up and when we need to reapply.
You have to.
Yeah,
You have to
to.
reapply.
We have to reapply. You and I
Yes.
have to
Okay,
reapply.
so, Mr. Chair, you, Mr. Chair,
Mm-hmm.
and Mr. Libby
Both need to
expired
reapply.
already.
Yeah.
Yes.
Probably
They've
just did.
expired already?
Yes.
And I sent you a link with
Okay.
the information to reapply.
I'll make sure to fill that out.
It would be
Please.
helpful, since you are the keeper of the keys to the kingdom, if you would let us know when we need to reapply. Because
Okay.
I don't know about you, Mr. Chairman, but I would have no idea,
With it happening right
because
after
I came
COVID, I
in
don't
an
know.
unfilled,
Honestly.
someone else's unfilled term when I first joined the board. And so there was a sort of zigzag there. We had Mr. Paspalakis serving a year and a half beyond his term without any renewal, so I mean, it's been a little loose and wild around.
Yeah, yours expired December 2022.
Okay,
Both.
all right.
Make
What-
sure to fill mine out. I got
Okay,
you.
good, thank you.
What's that?
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
This is for
And that's it.
public
Old
comment.
business.
All right, thank you. That brings an end to old business. So now we come to public comments. And first, we will start with John Nicholson.
You will email me what I need to apply, or can I just upgrade my last application, which was?
I will send you. You already
All right, go ahead.
Are you finished?
Yes, thank you.
A couple of things. Let me go through this and then because I always run out of time. One, Teresa's property, I think you should know what was sold and what she's kept. There were like 30 properties. She kept some, she sold some, because what she sold was what will be developed. So that's important for you all to know. The boardwalk, Anderson tore down Joyland. Where is that? What's coming down the pike? It was held up for 20 years in lawsuits. Now the lawsuits are done. It's something I think you all should know. Corbin Building, brought it up. The financial status, how much money is in the account, what comes in, what goes out. I think you all should have that information. What were the original parameters of this board? Because Jim Chisholm changed it. What you were allowed to do 30 years ago, you're not allowed to do now. What you were allowed to oversee is no longer allowed. So if you knew what the board was originally allowed to do and were asked to do, I think it would be helpful. And lastly, Bike Week, they closed the street at like 12:30, and nobody was allowed on. And they said, oh, that doesn't matter. And it really does, because it's very distinctive. You get a lot of money from Bike Week. It's very Main Street oriented. And to close the street, a lot of people like to go, the last thing on a Saturday night is drive down Main Street before they go back to their hotel. And this prevents that. The staff said, oh, well, it didn't affect anything. People were closed anyway. Most of the bars that I know did not close at 12:30. They waited until 2:30, 3 o'clock.
Sure.
So
Night.
I'm asking you to take a look at that. So, okay, first one, Teresa's property. Again, I think it's terribly important that you know what she sold and what can be developed. All right? It's a mine concept. The E-zone has got to come back to you guys. What was there? Because there's so many huge pieces of property that people are looking at. And if you all don't know what you've got and what's available, you've got to think of the long run, especially Consolidated Tomoka wanted to put a big, huge apartment complex there. That would change the dynamics you get 3,000 people walking the streets, that's right outside their building, is going to change things. The boardwalk, as you know, Mr. Anderson passed. What are his heirs going to do? Are they going to just sell it? Now, Teresa's pulling back. She was the other half of that. So what's going to happen? Because that's a major, major intersection and absolutely needs to have a hotel. A parking garage does not fit there. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh,
You got
I just had a question. What other properties did she sell? The garage that's closer to the bridge that's closed all the time?
I say I don't know.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. I don't know either.
Because I know she sold the restaurant.
She sold the what?
The restaurant.
Oh.
Barbecue, Kevin
yeah.
Barbecue.
Yeah.
She did sell, from what I understand, the property, Full Moon Saloon and the rest of that property she owns, all those businesses.
Mm-hmm.
All those went. Everything across the street went.
Mm-hmm.
The whole block, the Corbin building was
Yeah.
sold, and the parking lot that she uses for vending. all that sold. But what else, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think it's imperative that you guys know what was
Yes,
sold and what's
yes.
going to come down the pike, because if they purchase it, they're going to redevelop it. So I think,
Hopefully, they'll redevelop it. Yeah.
well, no,
Not
they
Mr.
will.
Chair,
now.
Mr. Chair,
They will. Well, there's already
Mr.
people
Chair?
that have left. The
Mr. Chair, can we move?
the
we can
Lebanese
move.
people, they've left their building. You know, all those shops across, he's out.
I think your time's up,
Okay.
John.
Well,
Thank
no,
you.
No,
Yeah,
I
know
was
there's-
No.
Yeah.
When the question goes, that's not time.
Okay.
And secondly,
More
all
time.
of this, the first five seconds or so that I didn't get to speak because Gary was speaking and whatnot, there are other things involved as well. But comments like that, we have a right to talk.
Noted. Thank you. Thank you, John. Ann Ruby.
Hi, Ann Ruby, 137 Park Avenue. We have a fantastic GIS department, so I think it would be very easy for them to produce for you, and you should request specifically a map of everything that CTO owns on the beach side. What did they purchase? That would be very easy for GIS department to do. So I would request that you ask them specifically for that inventory. It could include the map, which would be very helpful to see it visually, and it could include the property details. So I think that's a specific request you should ask for. I'd like to invite you all to, pass out these, to go to the C4RD website. That's where we have copies of the E-zone plan there, the Urban Land Institute plan, all kinds of plans the cities have sitting on the shelves. Some of them you'll be interested in, some not. But I think it's important that you familiarize yourself with those plans, because what you did tonight was you fell for a dog and pony show on a big, shiny new development. My guess is this development never comes to pass. All it was a zoning change. But the reasons given why we had to have it weren't really supportable. The plaza is going to be back up and running in 2024. This is not going to come online 5-10 years.
Yeah.
When you get projects, I urge you to please think in terms of the overall picture, the overall CRA, not just the shiny project in front of you. Because that building, are we going to see flooding coming up Silver Beach Avenue as he builds a really solid seawall? Probably.
Oh, it does.
absolutely.
Oh, it definitely does.
So
Yeah.
I just would urge you to not get suckered in by the Rob Merrill Dog and Pony Show, because he does a good one, and I've watched a lot of them. And you could have voted no on that PD until that PD included the stipulations that you wanted. That was an option that was available to you. No, because we want to see those stipulations, and they can come back. That was an option you had. So I'm a little disappointed, but that's the way it goes. So welcome to the new members, and look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you.
All right. That brings. Now we have board comments. Who has a comment? Yep. Go
Mayor?
ahead, Amy.
Thanks, I have. Regarding the properties that CTO purchased, I was actually thinking when Helen asked about that I was going to go online and do it, because I can kind of figure it out. But if our staff can produce that, I would be interested in knowing, kind of seeing on a map, like what's the outline of what Consolidated Tomoka owns now.
Yeah.
And I don't know that you've had any discussions about what's going to happen there, but those are the kind of things that are going to be big projects that are going to be exciting for us to see, and hopefully we can influence them in a way that's going to make Daytona proud.
Yeah.
The more senior members of our group and the younger members of our group, we all want to see Daytona be something special and unique. And I think these opportunities like the Corbin Building and the fact that the boardwalk is kind of like this right now, these are very exciting times. And I think the next couple of years are really going to be jamming in the CRA. So, but for me, I'm going to try each time we have a meeting to bring one small thing to ask about. And I've already had a couple conversations with Ken and Angela great. I'm very excited to work with you guys. But here's my small thing for this week, or for this month. The kiosk. On the informational kiosk on Main Street.
Oh, gosh, yes.
I want to run my truck over it
Yes,
one day, just to finally be done with it.
yes.
So can someone on staff take a look at cleaning? They did the ones on Seabreeze. They look really great. They don't really have any information in them now. They have pictures of dolphins or whatever. But that kiosk is what? It's kind of like the entrance to Main Street.
Right.
That and where
can
it says
call it.
amusement across the front, and there's a couple letters dangling. Those kind of little things I would love to see someone work on. So that's my final board comment. Thank you very much, and thanks for
And
everything.
we've been asking that for 20 years or more.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
20 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
You beat
Without
some of
it
this
might
stuff
go
goes-
30.
while.
Yes.
Thank you, Helen.
It was great the first 6 months it was up. It had everything you wanted on it, and then it was all downhill after that.
Yeah.
What do you want done with it?
Well, I want someone to stand there and take a look at it and say, how do we want visitors to perceive our Main Street?
It needs
And
to be renovated.
it needs to, I mean,
Definitely
I don't
Cleaned
think it
and-
needs to be, I don't think anything needs to be completely torn down
No.
and redone. I'm a refurbisher. That's what I do. I'm a renovator. I think we could look at it, decide what's still good, and replace what's bad, and make it, either, there's 4 sides to it, and, the plexiglass is bad. I mean, I feel like I looked at it a couple days ago. It could be announcements of events. Someone could keep up with it and do, you could have something about the Peabody on one side, something about Main Street events on the other, something about the next upcoming bike week, because there's always one, every 6 months there's a biker event. Something where people walk up and they could just kind of stand there and look at it instead of walk by and go, whoa, look at the gum all over that thing.
Well-
So that's what I think.
I'll interject one tiny thing. It used to list the businesses.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
Now
yes.
people come in my store and say, I can't believe it. I had no idea you were down here. And I've been there. Well, I built the building in 1971.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And when somebody takes the time to walk, they're shocked that we're there.
Excellent.
Who would you think would be responsible for renovating? It's one thing, but for changing the constant changing of special events and new businesses that open and ones that close.
Would that be
and-
Public Works that would go do something like that? Parks and Recreation?
Well, that's the problem
But-
that we've always had with keeping Breakers Park looking less than Brooklyn, is because we have to work with other departments and things. I mean, I don't know if you've been to Breakers Park lately, it's better. And the boardwalk, God,
Miss-
But if we have-
suffered.
Mr. Chair, just for information, downtown, we have several kiosks. And the marketing company that we hire, they do all the posters every month.
Good.
For us. And we have one of our downtown market, I would say, consultants, Al Smith. And every month, Al changes out the kiosk for us.
Right. But is that a DDA expense?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So we don't have a DDA on Main Street. So
Yeah, we do.
We have the-
a Downtown Development Authority?
No, we have a Main Street Redevelopment Advisory Board.
Well,
We
right.
have-
But, yeah. They have one of those too, don't they?
No.
No. Oh, okay. That's what it is. All
That's
right.
what they call theirs.
Okay. So, but they have a little more authority with spending money and things like that.
We'll take a look at it.
Okay.
Well, yeah, we'll take a look at it.
So I love the idea of a list of stores or a list of businesses on one side, maybe Peabody events on the other,
Yeah. Events would be.
biker events, and then something pleasant about Daytona Beach,
Signage is a big need.
Any
Yes.
sort of signage.
Yeah,
of events happening
attractive,
at the-
and someone has to kind of keep up with it, make sure.
Well, what you all are saying, it goes along with what we're talking about as staff. We need to figure out a marketing strategy for the Beachside,
Absolutely.
similar to what we're doing in downtown.
Things happen and people have no idea
Yeah,
that
exactly.
that happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
No idea.
Until after.
Until after. Yeah.
By
We
the
don't
way,
have a newspaper anymore.
Yeah.
That hurts.
Who else?
just an aside, Bike Week was one of the best we've ever had. We had people in our store from Belgium, from France, from Germany. No Russians came this time, after I took the trouble to learn a little Russian. They were from Tasmania, and they absolutely adore Daytona Beach. They bring us strawberry jam from Scotland, shortbread. I don't know how they get it here, but,
I have
and they
I have a
absolutely.
comment I'd like to make.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was talking some time ago with the city manager about us getting together as a board, now that we finally have a board and have a quorum again, and having a meeting on visioning, where we can have a visioning
Oh,
board,
yes.
where we can come up with what our plan would be.
Yeah.
That way we could all sit together. We could have staff on board. We could also invite
Mhm.
the city manager and, start coming up with our vision,
Yeah,
really hash
yeah.
out a plan for where we want to go with everything.
That just sounds wonderful. Yes.
And I don't know
We
if I
all-
need to make a motion for
We
that.
all realize that we don't do anything. We make recommendations to the city commission
Of course,
serving
yes.
as the community redevelopment agency.
But it
correct?
helps to have a vision.
Oh, I'm with you. Well, that's what
We
the
can
plans
arrange
were
that
for a
at
long
some-
time.
Mr. Chair, we can arrange that to have.
We can arrange
A
that.
visioning session, and we can do it during lunch, we can do it, at this time,
Yeah.
wherever, at you all's pleasure.
That would be excellent. I would really like that.
This is a foolish
Yeah,
thing to
It'll
add.
be public,
Of course.
of course.
Yeah.
A foolish thing to add is when I first came to Florida, I was, little. I was born in '71, so when I was
a baby?
I'm a baby, but yeah. So I was in the car. I can even remember the type of car. It was just this little Ford. No, it was a Ford at that time. It was like this station wagon. My dad was driving down. I was all excited. I saw the thing, "Welcome to Florida." I'm like, "Yeah," and it was great. It's not cold anymore. And I've noticed that they had these welcome centers. Everybody be the first thing that they do, they stop at these welcome centers. And I've noticed when I come into Daytona, I'm looking for the welcome center. It's like hidden. You know what I mean? So I've been looking at different ideas, and I'm thinking maybe we get some kind of welcome center on East ISB to catch them coming across that bridge, and then advertising for all the hotels to help them, because otherwise these hotels, coming in there, the presence that we have on East ISB right now is just not it's horrid.
The welcome centers are a product of county government. And when we built the Ocean Center and we put the east side on the Ocean Center, I was chair of ECHO. And the reason we did it and spent millage money to do it was they were to open a welcome center in the whole east side of the Ocean Center where people could pull their cars up, get out, come in, have a triptych. They could see what there is to do that day or that week. And all of that was on the go until we lost that city
What if we
manager.
could find a private investor to partner up with the city?
That would be helpful, I would think. It's the it's really, we could do it with the city, but the county has the Tourist Development Commission, the TDC, and they take the tourist tax dollars that are collected by every hotel, supposed to be collected by every hotel, and they use it to market and promote the area. And that's why the Welcome Center is at the Speedway and in the Chamber Building, the tourist development thing. That was
But your average people, they're
it's
driving- they're
completely
going-
out of the way.
They're, East ISB right on the corner.
Yeah.
I've already had investors talk about trying to do that. So
I would think our
curious what
county
people thought.
council would look very favorably on having some more visible tourist center on the beach side of Daytona Beach. They are our partner. They have a huge reason to help the success of the city of Daytona Beach, and we have to learn how to hold their hand. I would like us to also pursue parking, whether or not we can come up with some sort of a long-term parking arrangement where the western parking lot adjacent to Peabody could be used, people shopping on Main Street, and free, and not a fee-based thing, not $10 every time you park in there. And I think that could probably be done. We were told no by the previous city manager because of insurance, people backing into another car, running over somebody. But those were only reasons to not do it. But I think it might be, Ken, that would be a huge saving for the city, because one of the big problems on Main Street is parking.
Parking isn't.
There is no parking.
I mean, if you go to it often, you know where to park, but if you don't, you're afraid of getting towed.
That's why I want to know if Teresa's sold. There is an old gas station, which now she just uses for parking.
Yeah.
During the biking events, but you can't park there the rest of the time.
Right.
So, you know.
And that's because of insurance, and I don't blame her.
Yeah, granted. I mean, luckily, I have a big parking
Yes, you
lot.
do.
But the bar next door to me parks there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Constantly.
Parking Ken, that's a real serious problem. You know, we used to have 4 or 6 parking lots free to people. We rented the property. Instead of eminent domaining it, when we had the money, we decided to rent it from people. And at the end of the lease, they wanted the property back. We had made the improvements, paved it, banked it, irrigation, all of that, and lost. That's why we have no really public parking lots in the Main Street area. They were there, but they're gone now.
What about creating a trolley system in Daytona that's run from a non-for-profit?
You know, we've tried that several different times, and I don't know why it did not work. We had Votran order and bring into the area trolley-like buses that were open, you know, had a lot of open windows. We tried it, but it couldn't even cover the gasoline costs.
Okay.
Use.
Okay. Any other comments?
No, thank you.
No?
I'd like to know, how do we bring these, I guess, brainstorming ideas on how to fix East International Drive, Speedway Drive? How do we present that? I know Ken is the head of this. Is that something is part of your responsibility to bring it up? I don't know how the working goes.
There is a master plan, and it's being done right now from the bridge to the ocean, is now under construction.
Right.
And we had unfortunately, we had a presentation when we didn't have the pleasure of your company. It was about, 6 months ago? Public Works and Mr. Waller came and gave us a video of what was happening on East International Speedway Boulevard. Bike lanes and new sidewalks and a whole lot of amenities. And it looks like a huge improvement over what we have there now.
But we talked about adding parking and the new kiosks. I mean, where do we go besides discussing it here? What's the next step?
I think there are probably can think of 2 or 3 studies done by the county that eliminated public parking on the East Speedway Boulevard property. 1, the cost, the problems with eminent domaining property. 2, the lack of available property adjacent to International Speedway Boulevard, and the desire to bring traffic closer to the beach, people closer, you know, toward A1A.
To answer your question about how you get this to the commission, I think your chair's suggestion of having a visioning program and doing an idea of putting together a plan or something, he then can, the board can then ask him to make the presentation to the city commission of what you all develop.
You don't need to get it to the city commission, and I would like to address that, Ray, at the next meeting in essence of the time.
Okay.
But we already have a redevelopment plan.
Right.
And so at the next meeting, let me talk about the redevelopment.
Okay.
That would be excellent.
Please,
So we
thank
can
you.
have a direction on where we should go as a.
That would be
advisory
excellent.
board.
All right.
All right.
That sounds great.
Thank you, Ken.
Well, with that being said, does anybody have any other comments or meeting adjourned? Oh, and Ruby.
If you go to the C4RD website, 4RD Daytona, on the business card I gave you, scroll down to the bottom, talks about a trolley service, and Manatee County runs a successful free trolley service,
they do.
moves 500,000 people a year.
Yep.
So we could do that. So go there and look. Thank you.
And
But where are they going and what are they seeing in Manatee County, Ann? Is it different?
They're going 7 miles. We need to go 14.1. Theirs costs about $700,000 a year to run. Ours
What are
might
the
cost-
sites that?
They're not doing sites, they're just transporting people. we would follow the same route that, that Votran tried in 2011-12, just for a few months, not long enough to reach critical mass of ridership.
Yeah.
But they run a trolley, I think, 6:30 to 11, 7 days a week, every 20 minutes, 500,000 people a year. Imagine if we were moving that many people from Beachside, Granada to Dunlawton, over to Beach Street. It would be huge.
Does Manatee County have a Votran? Do they have a?
They have a
public bus?
Votran-type system that is their administrator. So Votran could do that for us here if the county council pushes them.
Yeah, it would have
So
to be the county council.
it could be done
Yeah.
if there's a will, but I think that's something the TDC should get behind, because residents would use it too. If it goes all the way down to Dunlawton, all the way up to Granada, it could move a lot of people. Yes. Thank you.
I've been in discussion with multiple groups because I have a parking business on East ISB, and they wanted to bring a trolley system in under a non-for-profit, and they would start off with their own money, and they would have a grant for transportation. They would have to get that grant written, or I could supersede that. But mainly, I've gotten that desire from originally having the honor to speak to the city manager and Ken Thomas, because they've been a huge inspiration for me, not because he's sitting across from me. It means that I see where the trolley, and Ann's been my inspiration also, because she has a wealth of knowledge. Yes. And if I could get with her and we could figure it out, maybe we could get the non-for-profit to do it on a small level, because I think they only can get like 4 trolleys. The trolleys are pricing around, I think, is $150,000.
Oh, yeah, minimum.
That's, the Votran trolley that's modeled on the bus is about 500,000.
Yeah.
You
Well,
need
they're-
4 of them, so I have modified my plan to think that you would just take Votran buses they already own and wrap them distinctively. But the other thing is, Manatee County gets half its funding from a FDOT Congested Corridors grant.
Right.
And then they get other funding from the hotels and businesses on the route. So we can talk about that later, but I think we should all go home.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ann. On that note, meeting adjourned.